Chapter 670. I feel like Senior Shen Hong is the captain. Poplar Fruit turned around and smiled at Fong Bei. They were now heading towards Chan Zongdai's courtyard. Fong Bei was not as shy as before since there was no one around. She held on to Poplar Fruit's hand and the two walked closely together. In order to accommodate Fong Bei, Poplar Fruit, who had long legs, deliberately reduced his stride length. Senior Sister Shen Hong is very powerful. She used to be a club president and won a first-class scholarship. Fong Bei nodded and said. Although the first-class scholarship was not as good as the national scholarship that Fong Bei had already booked, it was not something that anyone could get. Shen Hong was able to juggle her club work and her studies at the same time. She was really good in both character and academics. There was a misunderstanding here that had to be explained. Most of the people who could participate in the international competition had received a lot of scholarships. However, not everyone was like that. For example, Wang Di was very talented in mathematics and was one of the best in the competition team. However, he did not receive many scholarships. At most, he received a second-class scholarship after winning the international competition last year. This was because he was biased in his subjects. He scored more than 90 marks in his professional courses, but his public courses were a mess. There was a semester where he even failed Ma Zhe's class. The scholarship evaluation was based on the results of each subject and their usual performance. There was nothing that could be done if they only had good grades in their professional courses. Perhaps it was because Shen Hong used to be a club leader. She was very good at manipulating Wang Di. Poplar Fruit noticed that Wang Di was not in a good mood, but he was pulled back by Shen Hong. Later on, Wang Di said that he would provide Poplar Fruit with his collection of model theses from past competitions. These were the things that he had collected and accumulated over the years. Fong Bei walked 2 steps faster and stood in front of Poplar Fruit. She raised her head and asked, "Uncle, do you think we should buy some gifts?" Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "No need. Why, are you nervous? Isn't it necessary to meet the elders?" Fong Bei stomped her feet and looked at Poplar Fruit. She pouted and turned to hug Poplar Fruit's arm. "I'm a little nervous." "It's not like we're meeting the parents. Why are you so nervous?" Poplar Fruit patted Fong Bei's soft hands. He could feel the sweat on her palms and comforted her. "It's just a simple meal, the teacher won't mind. Besides, I brought some local specialties that I bought during my trip this morning, so I don't have to bring anything else." In fact, it was very close. It was only a few minutes' walk. Poplar Fruit and the others arrived. Squeezing Fong Bei's little hand, Poplar Fruit prepared to go up and press the doorbell. However, at this moment, Fong Bei pulled her hand back. She shyly whispered to Poplar Fruit, "Be careful in front of the teacher." Poplar Fruit couldn't help laughing. She wasn't a high school teacher. However, he didn't give his girlfriend any psychological pressure. He smiled at Fong Bei with relief and then pressed the doorbell. The one who opened the door was the teacher's eldest grandson. When he heard the doorbell ring, he hurriedly ran over. He only wore one shoe, as if he was worried that someone would snatch it from him. There were a few other children following behind him, and Chi-Chi was among them as well. "It's Papa." Kiki waved her little hands excitedly and gestured to her friends. "This is my Papa, and this is Sister Bei." "Hello, Sister Bei." In the morning, the children had greeted Poplar Fruit. They laughed and went around to greet Fong Bei. Poplar Fruit raised his head and saw the teacher appear at the door of the house. However, before Chan Zongdai could wave his hand, he was knocked aside. An old lady with a pot lid came out excitedly. She waved the pot lid and shouted to Poplar Fruit, "Poplar Fruit, quickly bring your girlfriend over to see your teacher's wife." All right, Master's wife's enthusiasm really made people blush with shame. Even Master was almost pushed against the door by her. However, the appearance of his teacher's wife could be said to have eased the atmosphere. Poplar Fruit was just worried that with his teacher's dull temperament, the scene when he met Fong Bei would be very depressing. "This is my girlfriend. Her name is Fong Bei. She's from the School of Mathematics. Poplar Fruit brought Fong Beibei into the house and introduced her to the two elders with a smile. Then, Poplar Fruit introduced his teacher and teacher's wife to Fong Beibei. In fact, there was no need to say much. Fong Beibei had asked several times last night. Fong Beibei politely bowed and greeted the two elders. After she entered the door, her mischievous personality was restrained. In a second, she became a lady of a respectable family. Her words were also soft and gentle. Of course, this could not be said to be pretentious. It was human nature to want to appear better in front of the elders. Good. Quite a beautiful young lady. Chen Zongdai was still acting cold, and his teacher's wife praised with a smile. Fong Beibei gave her a good first impression. She was good-looking and polite. She was not like the other students of her old man. When they came in, it seemed like they did not dare to speak. "Isn't it the holidays now? Why didn't you go home?" The teacher's wife was not in a hurry to go back and bring out the food. She smiled and asked. Poplar Fruit looked at Fong Beibei. If Fong Beibei was too nervous to answer, he would help her. However, Fong Beibei still smiled and said, "This year, I have to participate in a competition with my teacher, so I came back early for training. It's the mathematical modeling competition for university students in the United States. Beibei was selected in her first year." Poplar Fruit added. He also wanted to give his girlfriend some points. "Oh, your teacher's surname is Zhang? I remember that Professor Zhang leads the team every year," Chen Zongdai asked. At his level, he could basically name all the famous people in the school. "Yes." Fong Beibei nodded and said, "But sometimes, it's Teacher Shi who teaches." "Well, old Zhang is old." Chen Zongdai nodded and said, "Little Shi is also not bad. He has made a lot of achievements in recent years." "Okay." The teacher's wife patted Chen Zongdai and smiled. "Let's have a good chat. Don't talk about the school all day." Chen Zongdai and Poplar Fruit were then sent to the kitchen by the teacher's wife to bring out the food and fill the rice. The teacher's wife pulled Fong Beibei and chatted very intimately. The more they chatted, the better the teacher's wife's impression of Fong Beibei. The old woman had decades of experience. What kind of people had she not seen before? Even if Fong Beibei was still a little nervous, the teacher's wife could see through the appearance. She could see the kind and pure side of Fong Beibei. From the bottom of her heart, she liked Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei. The two of them were a golden boy and a jade girl. They were both so smart. Therefore, at the lunch table, a scene like this appeared. "Come, Beibei, eat more." The teacher's wife stretched out her chopsticks and put a piece of red braised pork that her husband liked into Fong Beibei's bowl. Chen Zongdai was quite sullen when he saw this. Of course, there were also the 4 children who were chattering and causing trouble. Today's lunch was joyous and harmonious, and Fong Beibei also laughed easily and naturally. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations, greater than over equal to. Chapter 671. Poplar Fruit was very busy. When he came back, he found that he couldn't stay at home for the whole day. If he wasn't going to visit someone, he was going to have a meal with that person. If not, he had to run around to prepare for his long-distance education. It wasn't that Poplar Fruit wanted to suck up to others. Take Uncle Jean for example. Even though he was already the deputy director of the education department, Poplar Fruit still got along with him like an old friend. They talked about basketball, life, and the books that they both liked to read. Even if he was the deputy director, Poplar Fruit wouldn't change his attitude. Besides, the deputy director and Poplar Fruit didn't have any intersection of interests. Poplar Fruit didn't need to ask for anything from him. Therefore, Yang Gua was happy despite being busy. Who told him to run around outside for a month and a half, but he only had half a month to deal with his personal matters in Yongcheng. Luckily, Fong Beibei didn't complain because Poplar Fruit was busy. The two were still very rational when it came to love and work. During the day, they were busy with their own things like a young married couple going to work. At night, when they came back to their little nest, the two would sit together to study and snuggle up to talk. It could be considered warm and sweet. The only unsettling factor was Kiki. Even though Poplar Fruit said that he didn't forget about his daughter because he had a girlfriend, Kiki still vaguely felt a little threatened. She started to pester her father all day long, asking him to hug her and let her ride on his neck to play with. She hugged her father's head like an octopus. Last night, when they went for a walk after dinner, Kiki, who didn't like to be held by adults, even squeezed between Poplar Fruit and Bebe. She pulled her father's hand away from Bebe's and squeezed herself in between them. She didn't want to be held by her father, but she also didn't want to only be held by her father or sister Bebe. Either way, she had to squeeze between the two of them. Poplar Fruit and Fong Bebe looked at each other and smiled bitterly. They could only listen to Kiki. "I think Kiki is jealous," Poplar Fruit muttered to Fong Bebe. "Jealous of you or jealous of me?" Fong Bebe mischievously asked, "Why do I feel that Kiki is closer to me?" "No, I'm her real father," Poplar Fruit anxiously declared. "Then tell me, how much has Kiki kissed you these days? Or did you kiss me more?" Fong Bebe asked proudly. Poplar Fruit was a little listless. He said softly, "You have a lot." There was no other way. Although Poplar Fruit had a lot of intimate interactions with Kiki, he was a man after all. Many times, he wasn't as meticulous as Fong Bebe. Poplar Fruit often saw Fong Bebe and Kiki playing happily like sisters. Under Fong Bebe's guidance, Kiki also liked to use the Western method of kissing to express her love. Although Poplar Fruit also benefited a little, it was far less than Fong Bebe. "I'm her real father." Poplar Fruit was deeply resentful, especially when he remembered that Kiki's first kiss was also given to Fong Bebe. He never stopped thinking about it. Fat Dragon sent good news from the mountain. The Hmong village was finally connected to the internet. The speed of the construction was faster than the speed of the cable. If the school was not fully repaired, Fat Dragon and the rest would have moved their computers to the school to give it a try. The progress of the construction on the mountain was getting faster and faster. Poplar Fruit could not be a hindrance. In the past few days, Poplar Fruit went to the school's student affairs office a few times, wanting to borrow their classroom. However, he returned empty-handed every time. This was because Poplar Fruit did not have an official identity. Moreover, the classroom could only be applied for by clubs. Without Chen Zongdai's help, Poplar Fruit was not qualified to apply at the moment. The only thing Poplar Fruit could do at the moment was to rent the one-bedroom apartment downstairs that happened to be available for rent. Renting alone could not solve the long-term problem. After all, the 6 grades had to be separated, so there would be 6 rooms. Yang Guo wanted to rent a house. On one hand, he wanted to settle down the equipment he bought and connect with the Hmong village for the final test. On the other hand, Yang Guo also wanted to give himself a place to practice Miaodao. He was a little depressed about this. He thought that he could find a place for him to practice his swordsmanship in such a big school. In the end, there was no such place. In the morning, too many old men and women occupied Higashiyama University. Even if Poplar Fruit shamelessly mixed in with a group of old ladies to practice his Miaodao, he could not get past the guards with his 2 big swords. There was no other way. His 2 Miaodao were half the height of a person. Even if they were not unsheathed, they looked like powerful weapons. Decorating a room was also a laborious job. Poplar Fruit wanted an empty room, so he basically emptied the original furniture for the landlord. A simple table, chair, and a blackboard for lectures were left in the living room. The remaining large space needed to be vacated for Poplar Fruit to practice his swordsmanship. Of course, the bedroom became a study and a living room. There was a sofa for resting and a coffee table for making tea or even eating takeout. Poplar Fruit planned to keep the bedroom as a backup. If necessary, it could be transformed into a classroom. Song Jiwen's friend was very helpful. He bought all the miscellaneous equipment that Poplar Fruit ordered. Someone even delivered it to his door and even helped to install it. Knock, knock, knock. There was a knock on the door. Kiki and Jean Zixian ran over, but she still could not reach the door lock. Poplar Fruit took the manual and walked over. When he opened the door, he saw Fong Bei standing at the door with 2 plastic bags in her hands. "Baby, why are you back?" Poplar Fruit laughed. "Are you still part-time delivery?" Fong Bei had things in both hands. She laughed and kicked Poplar Fruit. "You're the delivery guy. I brought you delicious food out of kindness. You don't want it, do you?" "No, no." Poplar Fruit quickly threw away the manual and took the 2 bags. He laughed. "I'm saying that you didn't take a break at noon. It's too tiring to come back in such a hot day." "It's okay. I just came back to see if you're done." Fong Bei excitedly came in and looked at the cameras and cables that Poplar Fruit was still installing. "Sister Bei." Kiki jumped around Fong Bei, attracting her attention. "Sister's little fairy, what's wrong?" Fong Bei smiled and hugged Kiki, kissed her and asked. "Papa doesn't give Jean Zixian food. Jean Zixian is so pitiful." Kiki pointed at Jean Zixian and complained loudly, not caring that her father was listening. Jean Zixian also wagged its tail and looked up. Its small eyes looked very pitiful, as if it was complaining about its male owner's harshness. Poplar Fruit saw Fong Bei looking over. He helplessly waved his hand and said, "It's not my fault. Who told it to be disobedient and run around begging?" It almost knocked the camera off. Fong Bei smiled. She pushed Poplar Fruit and advised, "Well, Jean Zixian is not sensible. Do you think it can understand your words like Kiki? Just teach it a lesson." In fact, he didn't let it starve for long. However, since Fong Bei and Kiki said so, Poplar Fruit had to give up on Jean Zixian's punishment. It seemed that his position was a bit worrying. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 672. It was time to welcome the new students. Higashiyama University was bustling with people and colorful flags. Poplar Fruit sighed as he walked around the campus. The last time he entered the university as a new student was 6 years ago. At that time, although his parents wanted to send him to school, they gave up because they were poor financially. Poplar Fruit still remembered how excited he was when he got off the bus with his luggage and walked through the unfamiliar Yongqing subway to arrive at Higashiyama University. However, Poplar Fruit arrived early and didn't make it in time to welcome the new students. He carried his luggage to the dormitory alone and was as tired as a dog. Now, 6 years later, Poplar Fruit entered the university as a new student again. The situation was completely different. Although his parents still didn't come, Lin Jie had consumed all their energy. Without the burden of luggage, he didn't feel lost because of the unfamiliar campus, and he didn't feel as excited as when he first stepped into this paradise. Poplar Fruit walked on the campus road with the notice and student ID in his pocket. However, he didn't feel like a new student at all. He was like an outsider looking at the bustling crowd around him. What a pity! Poplar Fruit shook his head regretfully. Fong Bei didn't come with him. Even Kiki was taken away by her. He was alone 6 years ago and 6 years later. In Fong Bei's words, today's glory belonged to Poplar Fruit. He should experience it himself. Poplar Fruit saw a thin and short girl dragging a big suitcase with a big quilt bag on the side of the road. She had to take 2 breaths after taking 2 steps. Why aren't there any volunteers helping her? Poplar Fruit was a little confused. Did they miss it? Poplar Fruit shrugged when he saw the girl almost fall down. He muttered, "Well, she can't be strong for nothing, right? Do you need help?" Poplar Fruit walked over and asked with a smile. Although it was a question, Poplar Fruit didn't expect her to answer. He directly took the suitcase from her hand. Thank you. The girl was startled by Poplar Fruit, but when she came back to her senses, she bowed to Poplar Fruit to express her gratitude. "You don't have to. I'll take it for you. Which academy are you from? Why are you alone?" Poplar Fruit pressed down on the blanket that the girl was about to carry over and lifted it up easily. Then, he dragged the box forward and asked curiously. "It's from the School of Mathematics. I'm doing my master's this year. I'm embarrassed to ask my family to send me. The girl was very nervous at first, but when she saw that Poplar Fruit was indeed able to handle it easily, she quickly followed. Oh. Poplar Fruit nodded. It turned out that they were in the same situation. He smiled and said, "What a coincidence. My girlfriend is also from the School of Mathematics. However, she's an undergraduate, so please take care of her in the future." The girl didn't seem to be very good at socializing. She smiled nervously and said embarrassedly, "Oh, okay, no problem. Do you want to register first or go to the dorm first?" Poplar Fruit asked. "Let's go to the dorm first." I checked the map. There's a right angle to register, and it's about 450 meters long. The girl finally saw Poplar Fruit's appearance, and her face turned red. "So, this warm-hearted big boy is so handsome?" "Unfortunately, he has a girlfriend." Even if he doesn't have a girlfriend, with my appearance, I don't think there's any hope, right?" Poplar Fruit didn't pay attention to the girl's roller coaster of emotions. He was a little speechless because of what the girl just said. Why are all the people in my academy like this? Even their words are filled with mathematical philosophy? Is a straight line the shortest between 2 points? Poplar Fruit was glad that Fong Beibei's professional illness wasn't that serious. Poplar Fruit shook his head and carried his bag and box in the other direction without hesitation. "I'll go register first. It's just a few hundred meters. I'll go register first before there are too many people there." The girl didn't have any opinions, so she had to follow him. Before Poplar Fruit reached the School of Mathematics, he heard Lin Xingshan's voice. Brother-in-law, brother-in-law." When he turned around, he saw her standing there, wearing a volunteer uniform and carrying a sign. In fact, Poplar Fruit had met Lin Xingshan yesterday. Lin Xingshan came back early to welcome the new students. As the new son-in-law of Fong Beibei's dormitory, Poplar Fruit had to treat her to a meal. Lin Xingshan could be said to be the witness of Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei's relationship. From the second meeting between Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei to the first failure of Poplar Fruit's confession, Lin Xingshan was always by his side. Even Poplar Fruit, the guy with low EQ, only chased after her. During the meal yesterday, Lin Xingshan was overjoyed. She liked Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei from the bottom of her heart. In her words, "This is right. You two are a match made in heaven." Just now, when she saw Poplar Fruit carrying another girl's luggage, Lin Xingshan was unhappy. She called out and ran over, giving the girl a look of protest. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Shan, so you're in charge of this? This is a senior from your college. I bumped into her on the road and happened to meet you. Can you help lead the way to report?" "So we bumped into each other on the road. Brother Yang is really good." "I knew it. How could Brother Yang like such an ordinary girl?" Lin Xingshan looked at her and muttered in her heart. The girl looked at Lin Xingshan and then looked at Poplar Fruit. She was a little speechless and laughed. Was she inexplicably envied by others? She said softly, "Hello, sorry to trouble you." Lin Xingshan was not a girl who pestered endlessly. She paused, then turned her head and asked Poplar Fruit, "Brother Yang, have you reported?" "Not yet. I'll send her over and report." Poplar Fruit smiled indifferently. "Are you also a freshman?" the girl asked in surprise. "Yes, I'm also a first-year postgraduate, but I'm from the outer court." Poplar Fruit smiled. "Brother Yang, why don't you report first? If you're late, there will be more people and you'll have to wait in a long line. As for the senior, I'll get the boys from our college to help, so you don't have to worry." Lin Xingshan looked at the girl and said to Poplar Fruit. She was not just saying it, she also waved her hand and called over 2 boys. Although they were not strong, boys were still stronger than girls. Poplar Fruit looked at the girl hesitantly. He felt that he should help her to the end. How could the girl not hear the caution in Lin Xingshan's voice? She smiled and said generously, "It's okay, you go report first. I have people here to help. Thank you so much for today." "Haha, it's nothing." Poplar Fruit waved his hand and smiled, "Then you guys go ahead, I'll go report first." Looking for monthly votes. Looking for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 673. Poplar Fruit felt good doing a good deed without leaving his name, even though the girl didn't ask for his name. After bidding farewell to Lin Xingshan, who was at a loss for words, Yang Guo walked towards the academy's headquarters not far away. Unlike Lin Xingshan, who could summon a few guys with a wave of her hand, Poplar Fruit's foreign language school was basically a women's world. Before he even got close, he saw a group of girls. Although they were wearing volunteer vests, many girls were at the age where they liked to look beautiful. They liked to wear shorts in the summer, and the rows of white thighs were particularly dazzling. The sun shone on the ground, and the heat evaporated the mixture of sweat and cosmetics. The thick smell of rouge flooded the outer court's base camp like the sea. Poplar Fruit felt lucky for the first time. Fortunately, the baby didn't use cosmetics. This smell is really bad. Fong Bei was a beauty without makeup. She liked simple hair accessories and clothes. She hated cosmetics polluting her smooth and delicate skin. In fact, Duan Xueqing was also barefaced. She basically didn't wear any makeup, except for the graduation photo when she was forced by her roommates to do it once. Not only did she not wear any makeup, but her clothes were also relatively simple. Although she was also the fashionable type, very few people could see it. Zhang Yujie, on the other hand, had to wear makeup when she went out. It wasn't very thick, but a light foundation and eyeliner would make people look more energetic and beautiful. Why didn't Poplar Fruit feel disgusted? That was because Zhang Yujie's cosmetics were very high-end, and it wasn't thick. Basically, there wouldn't be any strange smell. Because there were too many girls around, Poplar Fruit saw a little green in the crowd. He smiled slightly, walked over, and patted him on the shoulder. He smiled and said, "Hey Wang Yubo, why are you here?" It was the active boy in the French class that Poplar Fruit replaced. He turned his head and said in surprise, "Oh, Mr. Yang. Oh, right, you're also a new graduate student this year. I forgot. I should contact you when I go back to school." After Wang Yubo's explanation, only then did Poplar Fruit realize that this guy was the vice president of the academy's student council. Although his studies were average, he was still doing well in the club activities. The way out of university could be roughly divided into two directions. One was to study, and the other was to participate in club activities. Of course, this was not absolute. There were also many students who did well in club activities, and their academic performance was also very good. Club activities were mainly to train people's overall qualities. When they looked for jobs after graduation, they would have a wider range of choices than professional students. The meeting between Poplar Fruit and Wang Yubo attracted the attention of many girls present. Of course, Wang Yubo, who was originally just a little handsome, was immediately inferior to Poplar Fruit. Therefore, most of the girls were secretly looking at Poplar Fruit. Where did this handsome guy come from? It's so tall. Look at his legs, they're too long. They're as tall as Boss Wang's chest. Poplar Fruit also caused a small commotion and whispered discussion. The scene was a bit noisy, so Wang Yubo did not hear it. However, Poplar Fruit heard it. He chuckled and did not tell Wang Yubo that he became somewhat miserable because of himself. "Teacher Yang, Brother Yang, what should I call you?" Wang Yubo asked with a laugh. His communication skills were good. With just a few words, even Poplar Fruit, who had experience in the society, felt very comfortable. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "You can call me whatever you like. If it's simpler, just call me brother." "I don't care about this." "Hee, then I'll call you brother." Wang Yubo somewhat wretchedly smiled and said, "Brother, at the end of last semester, didn't you say that at the beginning of this semester, there would be a small test? If the results are good, I can go with you to Bali." The more Wang Yubo said, the lower his voice was, as if he was afraid that others would hear him. He smiled and said, "Brother, I've been studying very hard this holiday, but my foundation is a bit weak, so I can't keep up. You see, can't you give me some pointers?" Poplar Fruit snappily smiled and said, "You think I don't know what's going on in your head? There's no way. We have to test the real level of the exam. If you know the questions in advance, wouldn't that be unfair to other students? Wang Yuba was not angry. He just wanted to try his relationship. He smiled and said, "Brother, how can I be that kind of person? I'm not looking for you to leak the questions. Well, I just want you to highlight the key points." However, seeing Poplar Fruit stare at him, Wang Yuba raised his hand and said with a smile, "I'm wrong. I can't say that. I understand. You little brat, don't try to get close to me." Poplar Fruit was so angry that he laughed and scolded, "You just have to take the exam. How many points you get depends on whether your results improve or not. It doesn't matter if you don't get first place. As long as your results improve a lot, it means that you worked hard this holiday. Then I'll bring you a gift when I come back from Bali." "Really? That's great. I'll definitely get this gift." Wang Yuba confidently waved his fist and said. Poplar Fruit said, "Don't be overconfident. Whether you get the gift or not, we'll know after the exam." "Well, I won't talk to you anymore. Where's the registration place?" Poplar Fruit patted his shoulder and asked. "Senior, I'll bring you there." Wang Yuba volunteered. With Wang Yuba leading the team, Poplar Fruit's registration was much smoother. The undergraduate and graduate students all reported on the same platform. However, it was obvious that there were fewer graduate students. The one in charge was Poplar Fruit's cohort of counselors and teachers. Returning to school after 2 years, many of the counselors and teachers had changed. This cohort of counselors and teachers, Poplar Fruit did not know them. However, even if he did not know them, they knew him. "Poplar Fruit? The dean's disciple. Why is it you, little Wang, who brought him here?" Teacher Zhang Mei asked with a smile. She even stood up and extended her hand to Poplar Fruit. Sure enough, his teacher's influence was great. Poplar Fruit muttered in his heart. However, he did not dare to neglect and quickly shook the teacher's hand politely. He smiled and said, "Hello, Teacher Zhang. You flatter me. I happen to know Yuba here, so I'll have to trouble him." Teacher Zhang, senior brother, even taught our class last year. Wang Yuba's mouth was nimble as he spoke. "Then you have to learn well. Our dean has not taught a graduate student for many years. Poplar Fruit is a student that he made an exception to guide personally. It is your fortune to be able to learn from him." Zhang Mei's words were always flattering Poplar Fruit and the person behind Poplar Fruit, Chan Zongdai. Poplar Fruit hurriedly said some humble words. Otherwise, it would seem that he was too arrogant. However, the freshmen behind Poplar Fruit, as well as the freshmen beside him, were all paying attention to him. They had all heard what Teacher Zhang had just said. There was actually such a powerful person who could get the dean to guide him personally. This was something that they had never thought of before. Poplar Fruit wanted to keep a low profile, but it seemed like it was impossible to do so. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 674. Reporting for admission was not as simple as getting a student ID stamp. There was also a long series of physical examinations. Originally, Poplar Fruit wanted to help his juniors. However, after the blood was drawn, Wang Yuba refused to let Poplar Fruit carry anything heavy. "My body is fine. It's just a little bit of blood. I don't feel anything at all," Poplar Fruit muttered. He did not insist and followed the other graduate students to his dormitory. Poplar Fruit did not live in the dormitory. However, when he entered the dormitory, it was agreed that he would stay there. He could only apply to leave the dormitory later. After getting the key, Poplar Fruit thought that he did not have many things to do in the morning, so he simply went to take a look. Although he did not live in the dormitory, it was not bad to get to know his roommates. The dormitory for the graduate students was different from his undergraduate dormitory. It was a little better. It was a 4-bed dormitory. Of course, this condition was still shabby in Poplar Fruit's eyes. It could not be helped. Higashiyama University's dormitories were notoriously old. 603. It's actually the 6th floor. Poplar Fruit shook his head. Fortunately, he did not choose to live in the dormitory. He lived on the 6th floor. It was windy in winter and stuffy in summer. Anyway, it was all kinds of discomfort. When he was an undergraduate, the dormitory did not have air conditioning. It was only after he graduated that it was installed. Now, the dormitories had air conditioning. Otherwise, the summer would be like a steamer. Already there's someone? Poplar Fruit saw that the door of 603 was ajar. He gently knocked on it. "Hello, hello." A rough voice sounded. The door was pulled open. A thick Nonha province accent came out. It was a middle-aged man with many wrinkles on his face. He should be the father of one of the roommates. He laughed heartily and gave people a comfortable feeling. "Uncle, hello." Poplar Fruit quickly bowed and greeted. "You are?" A young and inexperienced-looking boy walked up from behind. He looked at Yonghua with a puzzled look in his eyes. "Your senior brother? Or?" His voice also had a little Nonha province accent, but it was not as thick as his father's. Poplar Fruit was now empty-handed, and looking at his mature appearance, he didn't look like a freshman. However, it wasn't right to say that he was a senior brother or a volunteer. Volunteers should be wearing volunteer clothes. Another possibility was that they were part-time students doing sales. It seemed that they had encountered a lot of them, so they were a little vigilant. Poplar Fruit looked around and saw 2 students in the dormitory. The other student was holding a book and sitting on the bed, looking at him in confusion. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "No, I'm also a new student in dormitory 603. My name is Poplar Fruit." "Oh, hello, hello." He pointed to the bed on the right side of the inner side and said with a smile, "You're the 3rd one to come. Come, this is your bed." There was a name on the bed, and they knew it was the right one. "My name is Ding Wenjiang. I am from Nonha. This is Wang Jiawei. He is from Guangdong Province." Ding Wenjiang was very enthusiastic. He helped to introduce them and asked, "Poplar Fruit, where is your luggage? Why didn't you bring it?" Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "I live off campus. I don't plan to stay here. I came here today to get to know everyone." When Poplar Fruit said that, Wang Jiawei also looked over with envy in his eyes. "Poplar Fruit, where are you from? You are so tall, and from your accent, are you from Beijing?" Ding Wenjiang was relatively tall and strong, but he was still not as tall as Poplar Fruit, who was 1.87 or 1.88 meters tall. Poplar Fruit's Mandarin was very standard. That was because Poplar Fruit had practiced with the news for a period of time. This made his accent sound very confusing, unlike the boys from Guangdong Province, who were difficult to distinguish between the back and front nasal sounds. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "No, I am from Guangdong Province." "Oh, Jiawei too." Ding Wenjiang smiled and said, "Wenjiang, which university did you go to for your undergraduate degree? I have heard of Jiawei's name. You should be from the outer court this year, right?" Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. When he applied, he found a familiar junior brother to understand the situation of his opponent. Wang Jiawei's name was on the list of recommended graduate students. He remembered it with just a glance. Wang Jiawei looked at Poplar Fruit in surprise and nodded as a response. He looked like a typical bookworm who was taciturn. However, Poplar Fruit didn't think this was a good thing. Ding Wenjiang smiled and said, "My undergraduate degree is from Nonha University." "Poplar Fruit, what about you?" Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "I am also from the outer court of Eastern University." Wang Jiawei asked in surprise, "You are also from Eastern University? Which class were you in before?" There were very few boys in the outer court. There were only a few of them in the same grade. If Poplar Fruit was also from the outer court, he should know. Besides, Poplar Fruit was so handsome. It was reasonable to say that he should be a famous person in the school. It was impossible for him to be a nobody. "Haha, I graduated 2 years ago. I went out to work and then came back to study." Poplar Fruit shrugged and smiled. It is normal that you have not heard of me. I am in the same year as you, and I have graduated from graduate school. Senior brother Yang? Wang Jiawei thought for a moment and exclaimed, I remember. When I was a freshman, your class won the first place in the basketball game. Have I played with you before? I have forgotten. Poplar Fruit waved his hand embarrassedly and smiled. Actually, first place is nothing to show off. During the undergraduate degree, our major had the most boys. We could even form a team of 3. It was much better than other classes. Senior brother is so amazing. You can actually work for 2 years and still come back. Ding Wenjiang said enviously. Don't call me senior brother. I am now in the same grade as you. In fact, it is not as difficult as you think. After all, we still applied what we learned, and we did not neglect our work. Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Uncle Ding, did you book a hotel? Poplar Fruit asked. He noticed that Ding Wenjiang's father could not get a word in their conversation. He was sitting next to them and was a little bored. Yes. The school's guest house was booked half a month in advance. Uncle Ding laughed heartily. The school's guest house is much cheaper than outside. That's good. Poplar Fruit laughed. Poplar Fruit originally thought that if Uncle Ding did not have a place to stay, his bed would be empty. If the other roommates did not mind, then he could make do with it for one night. We seem to be in the same major, right? Wang Jiawei asked. I heard from the counselor that we should try to arrange for the same major to stay in the same dormitory. There are 8 boys in our major, so there should be no problem. After getting familiar with each other a little, Wang Jiawei began to feel less bored. He asked everyone to sign up for their major, and it was true. Wang Jiawei and Ding Wenjiang had both arrived yesterday. They had signed up early in the morning, even earlier than Poplar Fruit. The few of them chatted in the dormitory. Unknowingly, it was almost noon. Hello, everyone. The dormitory door was suddenly pushed open. A medium-sized boy walked in with a smile while carrying his luggage. Behind him was a volunteer who helped him drag his luggage. The last roommate had arrived. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 675. The last roommate was called Hu Junjie, who was from Wu County. He had also studied in Guangdong Province for his undergraduate degree, but not at Higashiyama University. Just like the people from Wu County, his Mandarin pronunciation was not clear. When he introduced himself, everyone thought that his name was Fu Junjie and wondered why it was different from what was posted on the poster. Hu Junjie simply cleaned up. It was almost time for dinner. Poplar Fruit stood up and said with a smile, Today is the first time we have met. Shall I treat everyone to a meal? How can that be? Uncle Ding stood up and said with some embarrassment, If anyone is to be treated, it should be me, the elder. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, Uncle, don't argue with me. You still have to support Wenjiang's education. University expenses are high, so let me do it. It's rare that everyone is so happy. Ding Wenjiang's family's financial situation should be relatively average. Otherwise, Uncle Ding would not choose to live in the university's hostel just to save a few dozen yuan. Uncle Ding looked at Ding Wenjiang and said with some hesitation, How about you young people eat together? I still want to walk around the university and see Jiangzi's school. It doesn't matter. Poplar Fruit laughed. He pulled Uncle Ding up and said, Uncle, don't think about saving money for me. I have a job now. You also know that the salary of a good major is very high. And you too. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, If you have family members, bring them here to meet everyone. Don't hide them. I will also bring my girlfriend and daughter here today. Daughter? Everyone's reaction was shocking. Suddenly, there was a burst of exclamations in the room. Even if Poplar Fruit was 2 or 3 years older than them, they only treated Poplar Fruit as a slightly more mature peer. Children. This was something that they, who were only in their early 20s, had never even thought of. It was settled. Poplar Fruit first booked a private room in the hotel on campus. Wang Jiawei, Ding Wanjiang, and Uncle Ding drank tea and chatted in the private room. Poplar Fruit went to pick up Fong Beibei. Hu Junjie also went to look for his girlfriend. His girlfriend had also been admitted as a postgraduate student at Higashiyama University. When Kiki heard that they were going to have a big meal, she was very happy. She skipped and walked in front, swinging her little arms and walking on the road. She was about to float. However, Fong Beibei was not as easy to coax as Kiki. She was still a little confused as she walked on the road. "I'm a little embarrassed," Fong Beibei kept whispering in Poplar Fruit's ear. "I don't know them." "Then, do you want me to go with Kiki?" Poplar Fruit asked with some concern. "Baby, it's okay if you really don't want to go." Girls were thin-skinned and easily shy. Poplar Fruit knew that. He did not want to force Fong Beibei to do something that she did not like to do. "No." Fong Beibei shook her head. She held Poplar Fruit's hand and suddenly laughed. "Meet your friends and let them know that Poplar Fruit is already taken. There are so many beautiful girls in your school. You should declare your sovereignty as soon as possible." Poplar Fruit knocked Fong Beibei's head intimately and said with a smile, "When did you become so domineering? I'm not a fickle person, am I? Today, those who are going to eat are my roommates and their family members. They are all boys." Poplar Fruit explained with a smile, "Moreover, you don't have to worry. With my condition, not many people will fancy me. I have you, baby, is already a blessing of 3 lifetimes." Poplar Fruit pointed at Kiki. The condition that he was talking about was his status as a single father. However, Fong Beibei did not think so. Now that there are a lot of new students in the school, she could see the envious eyes of the girls around her. Poplar Fruit himself did not know that he was very handsome. Until now, he still had the mentality of a loser. Poplar Fruit's words were a bit mushy, but he said it very sincerely. Fong Beibei also liked him for this. Fong Beibei sweetly smiled and said, Uncle can only have porridge." When they arrived at the private room of the hotel, Poplar Fruit knocked on the door, pushed the door open and went in. Everyone looked up and saw a beautiful and cute little girl dressed like a flower fairy coming out from the crack of the door. Kiki was anxious to see the feast, but she did not expect to see a circle of people looking at her as soon as she entered the door. Kiki was shocked. She was not so brave. She stepped back and squeezed in front of her father's legs, blocking Poplar Fruit at the door. "Don't be afraid, call me uncle." Poplar Fruit smiled and picked up the little girl. Then, he used his other hand to guard the door and let Fong Beibei come in. Although Poplar Fruit had already greeted them in advance and everyone had some mental preparation, the appearance of Kiki still gave them a little shock. Hu Junjie, a man with a girlfriend, stood up first and welcomed Poplar Fruit to the main seat inside with a smile. Today, Poplar Fruit was treating, but Uncle Ding refused to sit at the main seat. Poplar Fruit had to sit beside him. "This is my girlfriend, Fong Beibei. She is a sophomore in the School of Mathematics." Poplar Fruit introduced her to everyone. "Hello, sister-in-law." Before Poplar Fruit finished, the 3 boys greeted her in unison. Fong Beibei stood up and nodded to greet them with a blush. They also introduced themselves one by one. Hu Junjie also introduced his girlfriend, Song Qing, a freshman in the Chinese department. Fong Beibei called them senior brothers and sisters, but they called Fong Beibei sister-in-law. Poplar Fruit was older than them. This contrast was quite interesting. Of course, Fong Beibei's age was somewhat contradictory to Kiki's, but no one questioned it because Poplar Fruit had already explained it to everyone when they were in the dormitory. They were very sensible and did not mention it. "And Kiki, introduce yourself to the uncles." Poplar Fruit looked at his daughter with a smile. He had taught Kiki to introduce herself these days. Kiki stood on the small chair, the waiter had not brought the baby seat over yet, and stared at the sumptuous dishes on the glass plate. Then, she looked around timidly. Finally, under the encouragement of her father, Kiki mustered up her courage and said, "My name is Yang Luochi, and my nickname is Kiki. I'm 2 years old this year." The little girl puffed out her chest and cheered herself up. Her childish voice made people unable to help but laugh. For Kiki, there was no problem that she could not remember 2 or 3 sentences. The main thing was whether she dared to say it or not. Only 2 years old? Hu Junjie asked with a smile. Kiki looks like a little adult. Kiki is 2 years old. Kiki, who could not tell whether it was praise or doubt, said anxiously. However, she could not find any evidence to prove that she was 2 years old, so she turned to look at her father. Poplar Fruit said with a smile, Kiki is 2 years old. Uncle Hu said that Kiki is very good at talking. She is as smart as a little adult. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 676. Except for Kiki, Fong Bei, and Uncle Ding, the rest were all first-year postgraduate students. The content of the gathering was not as nonsensical as that of the freshmen. Most of the time, they were discussing the content they were going to study, their respective mentors, and their future paths. Poplar Fruit's English department and Hu Junjie's girlfriend Song Qing's Chinese department were, to put it bluntly, pure liberal arts majors. Such majors were a little too high to be low-level. Because it sounded very high-end, it seemed that there were very few positions set up specifically for these 2 majors in society. Of course, this was only talking about comprehensive companies. Those publishing houses and translation companies were a different story. But at the same time, they were all-purpose majors. If it was not a technical position with high requirements, students from these 2 majors could apply for it. However, this also set a ceiling on their salary. It was difficult for them to compare with professional and technical talents with the same educational background. Ding Wenjiang and Hu Junjie were more confused. Song Qing was determined to be a middle school teacher after finishing her postgraduate studies. With a postgraduate degree, she would be more popular in China's education system. Although Wang Jiawei was a bookworm, what surprised everyone was that he also had a relatively good plan for his future. He would first study for his postgraduate degree, then go abroad to study for his doctorate, and then come back to Higashiyama University to teach. This was also a good way out. Poplar Fruit was mainly listening. While serving his daughter, he listened with a smile. Occasionally he would say a few words, but they were all the finishing touches that brought the topic of discussion to a higher level. Fong Bei was not left out. Under Poplar Fruit's intentional or unintentional guidance, Fong Bei also joined in the discussion. Of course, she could not give any good opinions. She just cheered for her senior brothers and sisters. It's not bad to be a teacher and a translator. Fong Bei said to Ding Wenjiang and Hu Junjie, why don't you try to be a translator first? Your English is so good. Fong Bei was a little envious of these people who were good at English. She said, Poplar Fruit used to work in a foreign trade company for a while. Later, because Kiki was born, he had to stay at home to take care of her, so he tried to be a translator. It's a very profitable job, and the degree of freedom is relatively high. Hearing Bei's sister mention her name, Kiki, who was eating mashed potatoes with her mouth full, turned her head. However, she was disappointed to find that everyone's attention was not on her. Poplar Fruit put down the small spoon, nodded and smiled. Bei is right. I think it's learning a foreign language is very profitable. Even if you have a job, you can use your spare time as a translator. Now that we're in graduate school, the courses are definitely not as tight as before. If you have time, you can do more practice. If you're interested, I'll recommend a website to you later. It's a translation platform. If you have time, you can take some tasks to do and earn some pocket money. Poplar Fruit lowered his head when he said the latter half of the sentence. It was not that he was deliberately rude, but Kiki found that her presence was too low, so she had to turn around and look for her father. She took her father's hand to the small spoon and shook it vigorously. She could not stop for a moment. Poplar Fruit had to lower his head and continue to dig mashed potatoes for her. Yes. You just need to practice more. Uncle Ding was afraid that Ding Wenjiang would be lazy when he was in graduate school, so he quickly said, Jiangzi, you have to learn more from Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit has experience in society. He has a lot of valuable experience that you lack the most. No matter what you do in the future, you can't leave the big school of society." Fong Bei covered her mouth and laughed. "Uncle Ding, Poplar Fruit is not as good as you say. He used to work for at most a year. Now he's about the same as us. He has 2 jobs at home and 1 at school." They kept talking about their future jobs, which made the atmosphere in the room a little dull. Hu Junjie wanted to change the topic. He smiled and said, "When I reported in this morning, I heard that something very interesting happened. Did you guys hear about it?" Ding Wenjiang asked curiously, "What happened?" He and Wang Zhouwei had reported early in the morning. At that time, there were not many people. Poplar Fruit was also very confused. He raised his head and glanced at Hu Junjie. He did not hear anything about it. If there was, with Wang Yubao's glib tongue, there was no way he wouldn't tell him. Hu Junjie laughed and said, "I won't ask Zhouwei and Big Brother, because Poplar Fruit was the oldest. He was promoted to this name by everyone." "Wan Jiang, when you applied to choose a supervisor, did you know the name Chen Zongdai?" This guy was still keeping them in suspense. However, Poplar Fruit could vaguely guess what he was going to say. "Isn't that nonsense? How could our dean not have heard of him?" Ding Wenjiang laughed and scolded. "But, why did you mention him? The dean is only a doctorate supervisor. We can't choose him." Fong Bei also secretly laughed. She glanced at Poplar Fruit, and Poplar Fruit looked back at her helplessly. "But, there was a genius in the first year of graduate school who was chosen by the dean." Hu Junjie said admiringly, "Let the dean be a supervisor. What a happy thing." Not only Ding Wenjiang, but even Wang Zhouwei opened his mouth in surprise. Poplar Fruit's matter was only spread among the outer court teachers. How could a nerd like Wang Zhouwei know about it? At that time, Song Qing accompanied Hu Junjie to enroll. She also smiled and added, "I heard that not only is he good at English, but he is also very good at French. Last semester, he even helped the teacher teach the second-year French class." Poplar Fruit smiled bitterly. He didn't need to ask to know that Wang Yubao continued to brag about his great achievements after he left. Ding Wenjiang saw Poplar Fruit's dumbfounded expression and Fong Bei covering her face to hold back her laughter. He asked curiously, "Big Brother, what's wrong with you guys?" Fong Bei finally couldn't help but laugh. She then winked at Ding Wenjiang and said, "The genius you guys are talking about, isn't he sitting right in front of you?" "Ahem, but I don't think he's that great." "Big Brother? It's really you?" Hu Junjie's mouth was wide open. He didn't look as proud as he did when he was telling the story. Poplar Fruit smiled bitterly and waved his hand. He said, "It's me." "But this isn't anything to be surprised about, right? It's not the first time our dean has taught a graduate student. But the last time he taught a graduate student was before he became a doctorate director." Wang Zhouwei shook his head. "Big Brother is too secretive." Ding Wenjiang sighed. Song Qing also nodded in agreement. Poplar Fruit didn't look like an expert at all. He was so approachable. He even chatted with them and treated them to a meal. No one would have thought that Poplar Fruit was so good at studying. Hu Junjie looked at Poplar Fruit excitedly as if he was looking at a celebrity idol. "Great, so the legendary genius is in our dormitory. Big Brother, we'll rely on you to live well in the future. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to, asterisk." Chapter 677. On the afternoon of the day he finished eating with his roommates, Poplar Fruit was called over by the teacher to prepare to speak on behalf of the new graduate students at the entrance ceremony. Speak on behalf of the new graduate students? Yongguo's face was full of doubt. He knew his own status. No matter how he looked at it, he didn't think he was qualified to be a representative. If it was just an entrance ceremony for the outer courtyard, it would be fine, but this entrance ceremony was for the whole university. There were so many talented and brilliant people out there. Why did they choose him as the representative? It should be known that Poplar Fruit had nothing to show other than his identity as a student of the dean. Every year at Higashiyama University, there would be many powerful people from the student union. Any one of their resumes would be enough to make Poplar Fruit feel ashamed of himself. Yang was still remembered that when he was looking for a job, he was assigned to an interview with a great god. The great god calmly read out a long list of national-level awards, such as Guangdong Province's Top 10 Campus XXX, China's Top 100 XX Team Excellence Award, etc. Yang Guo really didn't understand. Why was it that even though they were both students who had studied for 4 years, the great god had received so many awards that his hands were sore, while he didn't have many that could be mentioned? Why was the gap so big? Nonsense. Chen Zhongdai laughed and scolded. Do you think that my students are so worthless? Chan Zhongdai counted a little, and Poplar Fruit suddenly realized that he had made a lot of achievements in the past year. Take his own professional field as an example. First of all, he was one of the top literary translators in China. He was not a master, because Poplar Fruit had not yet won a translation award that could push him onto the altar. Among the translated works, there was already a super bestseller in his hands, and other works were planned to be launched into the market. Although one translated work was not much, for a graduate student, the well-known The Biography of Steve Jobs was already quite an achievement. Secondly, his non-literary translation ability was not worse than his literary translation ability. Cinda Translation was a platform that many students who were interested in translation signed up for. However, most of the teachers in Higashiyama University could not reach the gold standard. Poplar Fruit not only reached it, but also became the Deputy General Manager of Cinda Translation. Nowadays, managers were not worth much, but Cinda Translation was a big company with a market value of more than 1 billion yuan. The height of a Deputy General Manager was not something that a young student in his 20s could imagine, unless he was a rich second generation. Even though Yang Guo came from a humble background, she was still a very inspirational person. She was the Deputy General Manager of the company. Finally, according to Chen Zhongdai's evaluation of Poplar Fruit's academic level, even if the first 2 points were overturned, the last one would put Poplar Fruit in the forefront of all the freshmen. What was a student of the dean? Chen Zhongdai personally taught Poplar Fruit, not only to train a student for himself, but also to train a successor. In fact, the successor was not very suitable. If someone knew about Chen Zhongdai's plan, they would definitely be shocked. Chen Zhongdai wanted to use the power of Poplar Fruit to open a new era for Higashiyama University. Of course, this idea was quite shocking, and Chen Zhongdai had not told anyone about it. However, Poplar Fruit was now very powerful. In terms of academic knowledge, his knowledge reserve was not inferior to any of Chen Zhongdai's doctoral students. It was even a bit unfair to compare some young professors with Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit had a thesis published in Translation Expert. Did they have one? Poplar Fruit could give a lecture at a national-level translation conference. Did they have one? In addition, although he was only a graduate student, Poplar Fruit still had the title of a lecturer. He had already taught a few classes before he entered the university, and the number of lectures he would give in the future would continue to increase. There was also another point that Chen Zhongdai had hidden very well. He had never let anyone know about it, and that was that Yang Guo was fluent in 13 foreign languages. 13 foreign languages. People who could speak 13 foreign languages were not the only ones in the world. There were many people in Europe and other countries who could speak many languages, but to be like Poplar Fruit, who could learn a language beyond their native language, was really rare. Am I that good? Poplar Fruit was usually busy with trivial things, and did not carefully summarize himself. At this time, he realized that he was also the abnormal existence that he used to call himself. I'm not bragging, but if you were at Beijing Foreign Studies University, Choshan and Old Luo would definitely worship you. Unlike me, if the principal didn't ask me yesterday, I would only think of getting you a representative to play with. Chen Zhongdai laughed. Play? Okay, since when did the representative that he used to look up to become a plaything existence? Poplar Fruit complained, Teacher, this matter of being in the limelight, why don't we get someone else? I don't have that much time to play. I'm about to go to Bali, and I haven't arranged my things yet. To be honest, Poplar Fruit had not completely gotten rid of his previous attitude of being a loser. He was still a little afraid of speaking in front of so many people, and his first thought was to refuse. Come on. How much time can a representative's speech take? At most, I'll ask my assistant to write a speech for you and memorize it. Don't think I don't know that you have a photographic memory. Do you need a minute to memorize a few hundred words? Chen Zhongdai said firmly. This matter, it's settled. Don't say no. How many years has it been since there was a talent in our university? You have to win glory for our university. Since he said so, how could Poplar Fruit say no? He had to accept it reluctantly. Of course, Poplar Fruit did not intend to ask his assistant to write the speech for him. After all, he dealt with words. If he needed someone to write a few hundred words for him, he felt that he would not have the face to see his girlfriend. Coming out from Chen Zhongdai's office, Poplar Fruit looked at the time and was ready to buy food and cook. Fong Bei was already waiting at home with Kiki. On the way, he received a call from Zhang Yujie. Pang Yu's aunt's resignation was surprisingly smooth. Within a week of her resignation, Dongxin had already found someone to replace her. It was not a promotion from within the company, but a gold-plated person who came out of nowhere. Although she wanted to resign, who didn't want to see her old colleagues reluctant to leave. However, before she left, Dongxin had already hurriedly found a successor, as if her previous existence had already made the leader impatient. Pang Yu's aunt felt very hurt. Zhang Yujie told Poplar Fruit that Pang Yu's aunt was drunk at a bar the day before yesterday. She was already 50 years old. Today, Pang Yu would fly to Yongcheng alone without bringing anything. It was as if she was cutting off all means of retreat. You have never looked at me in the eye, right? Okay. I will definitely prove you wrong. Just you wait. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 678. I definitely can't do it alone. Poplar Fruit was drinking his soy milk as he explained to Fong Bei with a smile. No matter how good I am, I'm just an arrowhead. Maybe I can break the deadlock, but I can't drag the entire publishing house forward. So, we need an ally with many excellent translators. Fong Bei looked at Poplar Fruit with eyes full of admiration. She nodded and said, No matter what, Uncle is the best. Just a moment ago, she was still feeling a little jealous because Poplar Fruit was bringing an old woman around Yongcheng. Now, she was looking at Poplar Fruit with stars in her eyes. A man who was about to do something big. No matter how she looked at him, he was so handsome. Poplar Fruit actually didn't dare to say one thing. The biggest investor and collaborator of this publishing house was actually Zhang Yujie, a beauty who was chasing after her boyfriend. Poplar Fruit dared to say that he could be completely focused, but he knew that his girlfriend was actually quite worried about him. Fong Bei was quite reasonable. Poplar Fruit explained it to her clearly, so Fong Bei wouldn't hold on to it. Fong Bei just didn't feel safe and was always worried that her boyfriend would run away. Explaining it to Fong Bei in advance was the best way to solve the problem. However, Poplar Fruit faintly felt that it wouldn't work. Zhang Yujie was different from other women. Fong Bei might be very jealous and might even make a fuss about Poplar Fruit not interacting with her. This publishing house was the first big business that Poplar Fruit attached so much importance to other than distance education. Poplar Fruit wasn't willing to give it up. So, it was better to keep it a secret for now. When Zhang Yujie came, Poplar Fruit would bring Fong Bei to meet her. This way, Fong Bei's doubts would be dispelled and Zhang Yujie would truly let go of this non-existent relationship after seeing him and Fong Bei together. But, would things really be as thorough as he thought? Regardless of Yongguo's low EQ, just by looking at the X factor that can't be measured by common sense, how many variables will there be in the future that he can't understand? Hopefully, Poplar Fruit's sincerity and firmness could protect the weak love between him and Fong Bei. Back to the present, Poplar Fruit still needed to carefully protect this hard-won relationship. Fong Bei actually complained, Uncle, I feel like the gap between us is getting bigger and bigger. I really want to work hard with you. Why did she say that? Fong Bei felt that what she and Poplar Fruit were doing was not the same. It felt like Poplar Fruit was driving a Lamborghini on the highway, but she wasn't sitting next to him. She was just riding a small scooter on the green road ahead slowly. Previously, Poplar Fruit started the first distance education test in the newly rented room downstairs. Fong Bei Bei wanted to help Poplar Fruit with a math lesson, but Poplar Fruit refused without any explanation. The reason was that she was now fully prepared for the overseas competition, so she couldn't be distracted by this. Poplar Fruit was right, but Fong Bei Bei still felt empty in her heart. Now, Poplar Fruit was preparing to set up a publishing house with someone else, and she couldn't help in any way. Could she only be his vassal? Fong Bei Bei lowered her head and whispered, "I feel so useless." "Baby, you're thinking too much, aren't you?" Poplar Fruit walked over and sat next to the depressed Fong Bei Bei. He took her hand and held it tightly. He looked at her big eyes and smiled. "How are you useless? You're the best. Think about it, you're not even 20 years old, but you can participate in an international competition and then win an award. It's the hardest for me to catch up with you. But I don't want to compete anymore. I want to fight with you." Fong Bei Bei pouted. Her words were half coquettish and half true, as if the modeling competition she had been eagerly looking forward to for 2 months had gradually become less important. "You can't say that." Poplar Fruit pulled Fong Bei Bei into his arms and gently hugged her with his left hand. He smiled and said, "It's actually very easy to fight with me. When you come back, I'll come back from France. We can do this long-distance education together. Besides, I also need a bookkeeper girl to help me manage the accounts. But this is a matter of a lifetime. We can take it slowly. But if you don't participate in the competition this time, how many times can you participate? Don't you want to have your own honor? You're the bookkeeper girl." Fong Bei Bei rebuked and hit Poplar Fruit's chest with her head. Her soft hair slid past the tip of Poplar Fruit's nose, and the light fragrance made Poplar Fruit's heart sway. Just now, she had just gone into a dead end, but in the end, she was a smart person. Fong Bei Bei immediately figured it out. She smiled and said, "You're right. I want to bring back a big prize and put it in front of you so that you can be envious. Then I want to win a Nobel Prize in the future." Poplar Fruit said threateningly as he pressed his forehead against hers. Their noses were almost touching. Fong Bei Bei blushed and pulled her head back. Then she waved her little right fist and said disdainfully, "You want to win a Nobel Prize? TSK, I have a better chance of winning a Fields Medal than you." The Fields Medal was also known as the Nobel Prize of Mathematics. It was only awarded once every 4 years. Anyone who studied mathematics would be fascinated by this award. However, just as Fong Bei Bei said, it would be difficult for Poplar Fruit to win a Nobel Prize because there were no language awards. If he wanted to win a Nobel Prize, he would have to change his career, write literary works, or save the world. "Then let's compete." Poplar Fruit reached out his pinky and hooked it at Fong Bei Bei. He smiled and said, "Let's see who can win a Nobel Prize or a Fields Medal first. Whoever loses, has to wash the other person's socks for a month. Let's compete. Who's afraid of who?" Fong Bei Bei's eyes curved into beautiful crescents. She reached out her arm and hooked her delicate little finger onto Poplar Fruit's pinky. The two smiled and hooked their fingers together. It was like they were completing a not-so-serious ceremony. Of course, it was not completely a joke. Poplar Fruit and Fong Bei Bei's future was devoted to academia. They obviously wanted to win the most prestigious and coveted award in their field in the future. At this moment, they seemed to have found a common goal. This was the happiness that belonged to the young couple. Whether or not they could win was another matter. As long as they had a goal, they would work hard to walk down the path together. "Hey hey!" A happy voice abruptly cut in. It was Chi-Chi. The little fellow was playing games with Goldie with a small cotton ball. When she saw this scene, she hurriedly ran over. Chi-Chi wants to pinky swear too. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 679. Poplar Fruit and Fong Bei wanted to win the Nobel Prize and Fields Medal. Poplar Fruit only wanted to cheer up his girlfriend. He didn't want to win the Nobel Prize, at least not now. However, in terms of the publishing house, he wholeheartedly wanted to help Zhang Yujie achieve results. Of course, there was also a little bit of selfishness. Perhaps he didn't realize it, but subconsciously, he wanted to help Zhang Yujie. It wasn't because he was a friend, but because Yongwu didn't realize that he wanted to make it up to Zhang Yujie. Pang Yu picked up Zhang Yujie at a house. The house belonged to Zhang Yujie's family. Who the hell knew she had a house in Yongcheng? If she did, why did she come to Yongcheng to live in her rented house? Of course, the problem was obvious. Poplar Fruit only complained in his heart. Poplar Fruit glanced at Pang Yu in the rearview mirror while waiting for the traffic light to turn green. Poplar Fruit knew that Pang Yu only arrived in Yongcheng yesterday afternoon. He asked curiously, "Teacher Pang, don't you need to rest for one more day?" Pang Yu was here to complete the acquisition and reconstruction of the new publishing house before Zhang Yujie left Beijing. However, was there a need to be in such a hurry? Wouldn't it be the same if it was a day earlier or later? No, it's fine. We can have one more helper if we talk about the cooperation earlier, Pang Yu said calmly with her head lowered. Pang Yu focused on the documents in her hands. She took them out from the folder and looked through them one by one before putting them back. It was as though she was worried she might miss something. Zhang Yujie had asked her aunt to get the information from a specialized information consulting company. There were some from Cinda Corporation, some from some small publishers struggling on the verge of death in Guangzhou, and some from the companies behind the mainstream online novel websites in the country. What surprised her the most was that Cinda Translation was still a huge company even after leaving the parent company. They actually hired Poplar Fruit as the vice general manager of their translation department. Pang Yu knew that Poplar Fruit was an excellent person. However, was he so excellent that a large company hired him as a member of the management team? Moreover, from the information, Yang Gua didn't even need to go to work. He took the shares for no reason and didn't need to pay anything. Why would Shinda Translation spend so much money on a man who was only in his early 20s? Even if it was betting on Poplar Fruit's future, it would be too much. Pang Yu always felt that Poplar Fruit relied on his good looks and gentle personality to win the heart of her best friend's daughter. Therefore, sometimes she didn't like Poplar Fruit. Just like now, when she talked to Poplar Fruit, she didn't even bat an eyelid. However, Poplar Fruit's existence seemed to subvert people's understanding. Pang Yu also started to waver a little. Is this child really that excellent? No matter how much she muttered in her heart, Pang Yu was still a professional manager. Her professionalism told her that she couldn't bring her personal feelings into work. Whether she liked Poplar Fruit or not, she had to work closely with Poplar Fruit today. Therefore, after tidying up the documents in her hands, she chatted with Poplar Fruit. She mainly asked about the personality and preferences of Yao Dehua, the head of Cinda Translation. These weren't in the documents. Only by knowing yourself and your enemy can you win 100 battles. Pang Yu was able to go abroad and get the biography of Steve Jobs, because of this famous military strategy. Poplar Fruit didn't hide anything. He told Pang Yu everything he knew. He wasn't betraying them, and this information wasn't a trade secret. He also wanted to promote this cooperation. When he asked Yao Dehua's brother, Yao Dehua also asked him a lot. Poplar Fruit also told him everything he knew. This is a very strong man. Pang Yu waved her hand and said seriously, "It's impossible to cooperate with him without enough benefits in exchange. We have to be prepared for a long battle." A long battle referred to the tug-of-war of the negotiation. After all, this was a woman's vision and breadth of mind. Poplar Fruit remembered that when he mentioned this to Yao Dehua laughed heartily. "Poplar Fruit, you've attracted a wolf, no, a she-wolf protecting her cubs. But it doesn't matter. This is a win-win situation. Don't worry, I'll talk to her." The meeting place was chosen at Yao Dehua's favorite Mudu tea house, not the headquarters of Cinda Translation. However, unlike the previous meeting between Poplar Fruit and Yao Dehua, this time Yao Dehua chose a quiet room. "Hello, Sister Pang. I've heard so much about you." Yao Dehua greeted them at the entrance of the tea house. When he saw Poplar Fruit and the others appear, he happily greeted them at the bottom of the stairs. Poplar Fruit looked at Yao Dehua's expression and felt a little strange. No matter how he looked at it, why did it seem like he was looking at someone he worshipped? His eyes were shining, his back was slightly bent, and he even took the initiative to stretch out his hands. Brother Yao wasn't young anymore, and he was also the boss of a big company. Did he need to lower himself like that? "I heard that Teacher Pang is single now, although she already had a child." Poplar Fruit looked at Pang Yu's 50-year-old body and skin that was well maintained. Then, he looked at Yao Dehua holding Pang Yu's hand, seemingly reluctant to let go. He muttered in his heart, "Could it be? That's not right, Big Brother Yao already has a family." Pang Yu and Yao Dehua didn't know each other before. The only time he had heard of Yao Dehua's name was when Yao Dehua stood up for Poplar Fruit last year when Poplar Fruit was in the midst of a controversy. However, his memory was already blurred. Pang Yu gently held Yao Dehua's hand, then calmly pulled it out. She smiled and said, "You're too kind. Even in Beijing, I've heard of Mr. Yao's name. Mr. Yao is the one we employees worship." Poplar Fruit felt that he had learned a lot. He finally understood that Brother Yao's posture just now was just an act. Whether it was really an act or not, Poplar Fruit didn't know. Only Yao Dehua knew. When he straightened up, although he didn't have the effect of shaking his body, he still acted like a host and invited Poplar Fruit upstairs to take a seat. Poplar Fruit was reduced to a follower at this time. He helped to carry Pang Yu's information bag and followed behind the two. Even when they were seated, Pang Yu asked him to sit on her left side. Well, wasn't it a bit wrong? Pang Yu was at most an elder. It seemed that Yao Dehua was his boss, right? However, Yao Dehua didn't care about this at all. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to, asterisk. Chapter 680. Poplar Fruit never imagined that this meeting process would be so easy. He and Pang Yu actually prepared a lot of speeches and were prepared to spend a lot of effort to persuade Yao Dehua. However, Yao Dehua was already prepared. He didn't wait for them to talk too much nonsense and agreed to Poplar Fruit's proposal. Cinder Translation would cooperate with their publishing house, or jointly establish a publishing house for the world. This made Pang Yu and Poplar Fruit a little speechless. They felt like they had punched cotton. However, Poplar Fruit never imagined that the negotiation would be so difficult. Pang Yu's showing of his ability and Yao Dehua's refusal to give an inch made the negotiation really fall into a tug-of-war, as Pang Yu said. This is the true nature of a businessman. Yao Dehua was not as easy to talk to as he usually was. Although he was still half-bald and had a gentle smile on his face, and even his voice was as gentle as if he had just met his lover, Yao Dehua was very clear when it came to benefits. Back to the previous topic, after Poplar Fruit contacted Yao Dehua about the publishing house, Yao Dehua's first thought was to refuse because his translation platform was actually not related to traditional literary translation. Originally, he had already disrupted the original market of many established local translation companies when he expanded his business to the whole country. Translators clapped their hands and cheered, but those translation companies regarded him as a big problem. He had already made enemies everywhere. Now, he still wanted to provoke the nerves of traditional literary translation? There were many older generation monsters buried there. It was not an exaggeration to say that most of the best translators in the country were gathered in this circle. If he was ganged up on by them, Yao Dehua felt that he could not even keep his current assets. The only reason why Yao Dehua could calm down and think about it was that the person who proposed this was Poplar Fruit. Although it was just a thought, as a big boss who could set up a translation platform all over the country, he suddenly saw a glimmer of money-making opportunity in this. Of course, Yao Dehua also had to do market research. In the past, there were many people who wanted to start a publishing company, but there were even more people who wanted to do so. To be honest, this line of work was a thankless task. However, Yao Dehua had investigated the foreign book market and found something interesting. In the past 10 years, 65% of the platinum best-selling books in foreign countries were fantasy novels. Many online novels in the country were inspired by foreign fantasy novels and domestic martial arts novels, and evolved into various genres of fantasy or xianxia. Just like Poplar Fruit's investment, it might not be impossible to make money. Who knows, maybe the translation of domestic web novels would also be a foreign dish. Of course, after a brief moment of fantasy, Yao Dehua returned to reality. Dreams were beautiful, but whether or not they could be achieved was another matter altogether. Not to mention the ability of the translator, there were not many people in Cinda who could translate a Chinese novel into a fluent foreign language. No matter how monstrous Poplar Fruit was, he was only one person. Although Poplar Fruit promised that he would train enough translators for the publishing company, it was not something that could be done overnight. What really made Yao Dehua think was the power behind Zheng Yujie. Poplar Fruit did not say much on the phone, but Yao Dehua was not unfamiliar with the people in the government. He asked around and found out that behind this girl who seemed to have an inextricable relationship with Poplar Fruit, there was actually a great god. The administrative notice had been issued, confirming that the first leader of Guangdong province would take office in mid-September. If this was not considered great, then he really did not know who could be considered great. Although Yao Dehua's Cinda translation had a nationwide presence, its foundation was in Guangdong province after all. He had to face this seriously. No way. That would be disrespecting the daughter of the leader. In the future, he would probably have to bear the consequences. Even Poplar Fruit might have an opinion of him. This loss compared to the previous one was negligible, but it was indeed something that Yao Dehua did not want to see. Do it. Even if this publishing company suffered a loss, Yao Dehua's loss would not be too serious. After all, his focus was still on his translation platform. But he could exchange it for the recognition of the leader. If he could add fuel to the fire with his comforting words, Yao Dehua's company would soar. So what if he suffered a little loss? What if he made a profit? Needless to say, Yao Dehua and the publishing company would be the first to eat crabs. With both fame and fortune, they would wake up laughing in their dreams. Therefore, this was a deal that had more advantages than disadvantages. Yao Dehua also made his own decision. Without needing Poplar Fruit and Pang Yu to say anything, he agreed to enter the next round. You are investing with people, we are investing with capital and management. I can disclose to you that we have already received 500 million renminbi. This is only the initial investment. If there is a need for more investment, there will continue to be funds coming in. Pang Yu waved his hand generously. 500 million at the beginning? Poplar Fruit was a little dumbfounded. 10% is out of the question. Yao Dehua firmly disagreed. No matter how Pang Yu listed out the ratio of both parties, he could not accept such a low share distribution. Why? You don't need to participate in the operation and management of the publishing company. This is more than enough for you. Pang Yu asked sharply. Although you are investing, we are providing people, and the most important people. Yao Dehua laughed. It's more like we are training people to serve you, and this is only 10%? That's not right, right? That's not right. Pang Yu said fiercely, we only need your platform to provide us with human resources, not for you to nurture human resources. The one training people is Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit listened from the side, blinked, and did not make a sound. His task was to facilitate this cooperation. As for the distribution of the cake, he did not want to and could not say anything. If your people are the raw jade, then Poplar Fruit is the knife that cuts the stone and takes out the jade. On this level, giving you 10% is already a lot. Pang Yu said. Poplar Fruit is considered one of my people, right? Yao Dehua's eyes carried a smile as he looked at this woman who was older than him by 3 years but was still graceful and graceful. He still said slowly. No, as far as I know, Poplar Fruit is only in a cooperative relationship with you. He does not belong to Xinda. Pang Yu hit the nail on the head. She spoke quickly. In the chain of relationships for the establishment of the publishing company, Poplar Fruit is also involved as a partner. Our investors have already stated that no matter how the shares are distributed, Poplar Fruit will take 20% of the shares. What? Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to, asterisk. Chapter 681. Me. 20%. Poplar Fruit pointed at himself and asked. He didn't have to guess. He knew that he would get some shares, so he felt guilty and wanted to work harder. However, he didn't expect Zhang Yujie to give him 20% of the shares. What does this mean? 20%. Just based on Zhang Yujie's investment alone, it was already worth 100 million. Isn't this giving him 100 million for free? Now, even Yao Dehua's big brother was looking at him differently. You're not being kept, are you? Pang Yu also looked at Poplar Fruit with a complicated expression. She didn't dare to say no to Zhang Yujie's decision, but she still couldn't hide the jealousy in her heart. Zhang Yujie gave her 3% of the shares as a reward for being the CEO, and this was the shares that couldn't be sold. When Pang Yu quit, she could only exchange the shares with Zhang Yujie according to the market value. How could Poplar Fruit get 20% of the shares for free? Pang Yu couldn't figure it out. Poplar Fruit smiled bitterly and said, "How can this be? You guys sit down, I'm going to make a phone call." Pang Yu couldn't say, "How can this be?" He stood up and walked out of the door while he dialed Zhang Yujie's phone number. After a beep, the call was connected. Zhang Yujie took the lead with a hearty smile and asked, "How is it? Is there any good news?" Poplar Fruit didn't answer her question. He thought for a while and said, "You're messing around again." Messing around? Zhang Yujie was silent for a while. She understood what Poplar Fruit was referring to. She smiled and said, "What do you mean messing around? I think you're worth this price." "Starting a business is not a game," Poplar Fruit said earnestly. "You gave me so many shares, what do you want the others to do?" Teacher Pang was only willing to give 10% to Xinda's CEO Yao. "How are you going to let CEO Yao off the stage?" "I don't care. Anyway, this 20% is for you, so he'll suffer a little loss." Zhang Yujie said unreasonably, "You're the one who's starting a business with me, not Yao Dehua. Why should I give him so much?" "Well, even if you give him more shares, you don't have to give me so much, right? What I can do is very limited. I can only be a translator. At most, I can give some guidance to the translators who have signed a contract with a publishing house. I feel that I am not as useful as Teacher Pang." Poplar Fruit said softly, "I can't take 20%. How about I take 2%? The bunny you sent me is very cute." Zhang Yujie suddenly said, "Although it's been half a month since my birthday, I still like it even if it's late." Poplar Fruit smiled bitterly. What she meant was that she did not want to talk to him. However, Poplar Fruit still did not want so many shares, so he did not continue the conversation. Zhang Yujie waited for a while. Her voice was a little low, but she still did not allow Poplar Fruit to refuse. She said, "Why don't you look at it from another direction? This publishing house will be set up by you and me together. You were the one who came up with the idea. Our relationship is like Apple's Steve Jobs and Wozniak, or Microsoft's Bill Gates and Paul Allen. Since you are the co-founders, isn't 20% of the shares a small amount?" Without waiting for Poplar Fruit to answer, Zhang Yujie took a deep breath and asked, "Or, you never thought of setting up this publishing house with me? You just told me that I should do this, and then left me aside?" "It's not like that." Poplar Fruit smiled bitterly and said, "I definitely won't leave you alone, but you know my situation. I can't devote myself to the publishing house. I can't even guarantee how much energy I will spend on it. I still have the long-distance education for the children in Xiong Village and my own studies. I can't help you much. Just like what you did before, do some translation, and then come over to guide the translators when you have time. That's enough." Zhang Yujie's tone became gentler. She said in a pleading tone, 20% is already very little. Why can't you accept my kind intentions? Do I look like someone who cares about this small amount of shares? Hearing Zhang Yujie's voice, Poplar Fruit's heart softened. He touched his nose and felt as if he had become a heartless man. It was especially uncomfortable. Don't you want to do charity? This 20% shares will give you a lot of dividends every year. Just treat it as me investing in your charity, okay? Zhang Yujie said softly in a low voice. What else could he say? Poplar Fruit could only comfort her and repeatedly say that he would not change his mind. The 20% was set just like that. After that, Zhang Yujie laughed. She began to talk to Poplar Fruit about the smog in Beijing. For a moment, Poplar Fruit felt that her sobbing voice was not fake. Well, no matter what, since he had already agreed, he could only follow this setting. Back in the private room, Pang Yu and Yao Dehua were still arguing. Yao Dehua also wanted to get 20%, but Pang Yu was still stubbornly insisting on 10%. Pang Yu was a northerner, so his tone and tone were a little fiery. Yao Dehua, on the other hand, was still all right. He was a typical southern man with a calm temperament. The atmosphere that was on the verge of a huge argument was firmly controlled by him to a suitable temperature. Big Brother Yao. After Poplar Fruit came back, he finally opened his mouth. He smiled and said, "To be honest, Teacher Pang wants to cooperate with Cinder Translation because of the cohesion of our platform and Cinder Translation's strong talent pool. Using Teacher Pang's rich connections and senior management experience in the publishing industry, coupled with the advantages of Cinder Translation, we will definitely be the first publishing house in China to go global. This is a win-win situation." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "For your translation platform, this is also an opportunity for the flow of talent and the cultivation of talent. Why are you so hung up on the number of shares? You know, you don't have to invest a single cent." "That's not right, right?" Yao Dehua was not so easily convinced. He shook his head and said, "A publishing house doesn't need ordinary translators. If you want to be external, you will definitely need gold-level translators. Poplar Fruit, you know how important gold-level translators are to Cinder. If you take away a large number of them, how do you expect Cinder to survive? That's why I want more shares." "It's not wrong at all." Yao Dehua smiled and said, "What Cinder needs is talent, and the most important thing for Cinder is talent. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations, greater than over equal to." Chapter 682. There were some harsh words that Poplar Fruit could not say, but Pang Yu knew that it was time for her to play the bad guy. She knocked on the table and said to Yao Dehua bluntly, "Mr. Yao, since you said so, I'll be honest with you. Talents are treasures everywhere. If Poplar Fruit did not say that we should cooperate with you, I would have directly poached them. We don't have the information of the gold medal translators that you registered, so we can't do anything about it. But isn't it different for your company's gold medal translators? Our sponsors are big investors. As long as they jump ship, we don't care about providing them with high salaries," Pang Yu said with a smile. Although she was smiling, Poplar Fruit felt that there was a hidden dagger in her smile. "There's no need to make things so awkward." Poplar Fruit waved his hand between the two and said with a bitter smile, "There's always money to be made. A win-win situation is the best choice. If they really fell out, it would not be fun." Pang Yu was actually bragging. Even if they fell out, it was unlikely that she would poach the translators. As she said, they were not short of money. However, was it worth it to spend a lot of money to poach the translators? The best relationship between the publishing house and the translators was the one between Poplar Fruit and Dongxin. If they translated the books, they would pay. If they did not translate, they would not pay. Of course, when Zhang Yujie and Poplar Fruit discussed, they planned to provide a further contract for the translators with standard or potential. In other words, the publishing house would provide them with a basic salary and insurance. Then, they would focus on serving their own publishing house and earn more through translation. If they poached a large number of gold medal translators with high salaries, what could they do? Reviewing manuscripts? However, Pang Yu planned to use foreigners with higher standards to review manuscripts. There would be Chinese too, but not too many. If so many people did not work and could not create value that matched their salary would definitely become a huge burden for the new publishing house, hindering the development of the publishing house. At that point, it would no longer be a win-win situation, but a lose-lose situation. It was rare for Yao Dehua to be silent for a moment. He was considering the consequences. No one would be in a good spot if they fell out with each other. It would be equivalent to the other party throwing away a lot of money. However, whether it was from an official or commercial point of view, he would suffer the greatest loss if they fell out. After all, the top interpreters in the company were his lifeblood. If they were poached away, who would review the results of those tasks? Big Brother Yao, you don't have to worry about it. Poplar Fruit said with a smile, in the early days of the publishing house, we didn't need gold medal interpreters. What's more, I didn't say that we had to select from those gold medal interpreters signed by your company. We might need some group leaders to take the lead, and the rest could be selected from those who have not signed a contract with us, or silver medal interpreters with great potential. Aren't you also planning a translation training class or training school in Cinda? Poplar Fruit said with a smile, we also have such plans. For the first 2 years, we don't have to sell books on a large scale. The goal is to cultivate talents. I will guide them and help them find the feeling of translating web novels. Pang Yu listened to him like she was listening to a fantasy story. If it weren't for the occasion, she would have rolled her eyes. What do you mean by you will guide them? How old are you and you want to be a teacher? Pang Yu was indeed a layman in the field of translation. She didn't understand, but Yao Dehua did. In the past few months, no matter how busy he would check on Poplar Fruit's recent situation every once in a while. Yao Dehua knew exactly how strong Poplar Fruit was at the moment. Yao Dehua knew Poplar Fruit's growth process even better than Poplar Fruit's own teacher, Chan Zongdai. He had been in contact with Poplar Fruit before Poplar Fruit became famous. At that time, Professor Wu Pings of Cinda Translation only felt that Poplar Fruit was a good seedling. Now, Poplar Fruit was an existence that could stand in front of so many veteran translators and veteran professors in the country and speak with assurance. Regardless of whether his theories would lead the trend of the times, Poplar Fruit was already a success from the moment he stood on the podium of the seminar. Yao Dehua also had a lot of confidence in Poplar Fruit's teaching skills. At that time, Poplar Fruit's first full company meeting at Cinda Translation, he had a verbal battle with a group of scholars at the small language branch meeting. He had used his own charm to subdue all the arrogant gold medal translators. The training materials that he sent to the translation department in mid-August shocked several old antiques in the translation department. Just some of Poplar Fruit's experiences were enough to benefit the translators who came to the training. Poplar Fruit had the ability to say such things. Poplar Fruit, are you going to ignore Cinda Translation? Yao Dehua asked with a smile. I haven't seen you give a single lesson to our translators. Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said embarrassedly, I've been a little busy recently, and I have to go to France in a week. I really can't find the time. If you want to give a lesson, you have to wait for me to come back. Before Yao Dehua could say anything, Poplar Fruit began to say with shame, Brother Yao, how about I return your shares to you? Also, this position of Deputy General Manager is not very suitable. I always don't show up and bring you a lot of trouble. I'll just cooperate with Cinda Translation like before. When you need me to give a lesson, we'll talk about it. That's not possible. How can I take back the shares that I gave you? Yao Dehua shook his head firmly and said, even if you don't show up for a whole year, with these shares, you're still a member of Cinda Translation. Poplar Fruit was a good kid. The more Yao Dehua said this, the more guilty he felt. Thank you for your trust. Brother Yao, when I come back, I will definitely come to help our Cinda Translation training class. Pang Yu really couldn't understand. She sat there dumbfounded and muttered in her heart, how can there be people who desperately give money to the other party, and then the other party feels guilty and doesn't want it? It's really strange. Yao Dehua found out through Poplar Fruit's words that he didn't lose much. Using a few gold metal translators and some gold and silver metal translators who might have potential in exchange for the support of the future leader of Guangdong province, this deal was worth it. So, he finally went with the flow and slightly returned the price. Pang Yu didn't insist and slightly increased Yao Dehua's shares. In the end, they reached an agreement of 13%. Of course, at present, they only signed a letter of intent. The final contract still had many details to be discussed further, such as the specific obligations of both parties and the number of translators, etc. These were left to Pang Yu and Yao Dehua, as well as their respective professional lawyer teams to discuss. Poplar Fruit didn't have time to participate. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations, greater than over equal to. Chapter 683. Hello. A head popped in from the door and looked into the room. Come in. Fong Beibei gently knocked on her head and said reproachfully, Are you afraid that we'll eat you up? I'm afraid that I will see something that I shouldn't see. Lin Xingshan pushed open the door and jumped in. She squatted down with a smile and touched the head of Goldie who was wagging its tail. What is there that you shouldn't see? You think too much. Fong Beibei knocked her head again. Shan, you're here? Poplar Fruit just came out of the bathroom and greeted Kiki while holding her. After eating breakfast, he took his daughter to the bathroom to clean her mouth and teeth. Hello, brother-in-law. Hello, Kiki. Lin Xingshan mischievously jumped up and bowed. This was too pretentious. Fong Beibei was a little embarrassed and complained in a low voice, Why are you calling me that? Lin Xingshan was the first to come back from their dormitory. Of course, she also found out that Fong Beibei had moved out. Fong Beibei really had a relationship with Poplar Fruit. She had spread the news throughout the dormitory. Lin Xingshan really treated Poplar Fruit as her brother-in-law. Hello, Sister Shanshan. Kiki asked her father to put her down. She ran to Lin Xingshan's side and asked for a hug. Lin Xingshan smiled and watched her carry her. Poplar Fruit was a little worried. Lin Xingshan was so small. Would she be crushed? Kiki kissed her. Lin Xingshan smiled and said, Kiki is so obedient. Obedient. She is obedient now. Poplar Fruit criticized his daughter in his heart. It's okay after breakfast. Wait a while and you will know what trouble is. Kiki's heart was wild in Xiong village. She could no longer sit beside her father and play with her toys like before. If she couldn't go out to play, she would jump up and down and be as naughty as a boy. Together with Goldie who liked to join in the fun, the house would be a mess because of them. Lin Xingshan came today, of course, not to be Poplar Fruit's nanny. She was recommended by Fong Beibei to be a math teacher. Fong Beibei currently didn't have time to participate, so she let her best friend take the lead first. Before Poplar Fruit went to Bali, he had to gather enough people for his distance education. Then, when he was in Bali, he could continue to add people. As for mathematics, Yanghua wanted to let Lin Xingshan try it out first. She was a very caring girl. Yanghua planned to let her try it out first. Then, after the charity club was established, she could choose a few students to teach mathematics and let them take turns teaching. 1 or 2 people couldn't cope with more than 300 children. This matter couldn't be rushed. Poplar Fruit planned to take it slow. The Xiong village would also understand. After all, their children had already been released for several years, and now they were not in a hurry to have a short period of schoolwork. Come, Kiki. Go put on your shoes with Beibei sister. I want to send you to Grandma Chen's place. Fong Beibei walked over and pulled Kiki. Okay. I want to play hopscotch with Brother Nan. Kiki jumped up happily. Brother Nan was Chan Zongdai's grandson, Channy Nan. As she jumped, the braids that Poplar Fruit tied for her in the morning fell down. Your dad's skills are too bad. Fong Beibei smiled and looked at Poplar Fruit who was scratching his head. Don't move. Turn around. Sister Beibei will do it for you. I want Sister Xiaoqian's hairstyle. Kiki didn't listen and moved around. She even turned her head and shouted excitedly. Which one is Sister Xiaoqian's hairstyle? Fong Beibei turned around and asked Poplar Fruit. She knew that Chan Xiaoqian was Poplar Fruit's granddaughter. However, she didn't remember what my daughter's hairstyle was like. Poplar Fruit could only gesture and tell Fong Beibei, "It's a bit bohemian, a small braid slanted down like this." That hairstyle was indeed beautiful. Otherwise, the narcissistic Kiki wouldn't have kept pestering Poplar Fruit to braid it for her this morning. However, Poplar Fruit really didn't know how to do it. Fong Beibei also didn't braid this hairstyle. However, hair was the same as mathematics. Fong Beibei pondered for a while and had an idea. There are 2 more people coming today. Poplar Fruit explained, one of them is a student from my French class. He's 1 year older than you. You'll have to call him senior, haha. But, I seem to be older than him. Lin Xingshan laughed and said, "You're my brother-in-law, so I'm in the same generation as you. He's your student, so he's 1 generation younger than you. In summary, I'm older than him." Poplar Fruit was speechless. Why didn't he realize that Lin Xingshan had the potential to be a little two-faced? "Let's talk about our own matters." Poplar Fruit said, "The other one is my roommate's girlfriend, a first-year graduate student from the Chinese department." Song Qing originally wanted to join the graduate student group to train her ability as a teacher. Higashiyama University's graduate student group was very famous. However, Poplar Fruit persuaded her to stay. If she joined the graduate student group, she would have to go to the mountains and the border for a year like those seniors. Hu Junjie didn't want his girlfriend to suffer so much. Song Qing was also a little reluctant. Therefore, Poplar Fruit used this as a breakthrough. Song Qing didn't insist and agreed. While they were talking, Fong Beibei had finished braiding Kiki's hair. She clapped her hands and said with a smile, "It's done." Just as she squatted down to put on Kiki's little shoes for her, Kiki jumped out and went straight to her dearest father. "Papa, do you think Kiki is beautiful?" Chi-Chi raised both of her hands, wanting to set off her hair. Then, she twirled her hands in a circle, as if she was dancing. Poplar Fruit said with a smile, "You're beautiful." "Your sister Beibei's skills are great." Poplar Fruit squatted down and touched his daughter's little head. There were some lines on the back of the braid, which was very comfortable to touch. Kiki leaned on her father's body and then wrapped her arms around her father's neck. She pointed in the direction of the toilet and shouted, "Kiki also wants to see." Well, the little girl didn't forget to look in the mirror after braiding her hair. "Come and put on your shoes." Fong Beibei carried the shoes and smiled helplessly, "Otherwise, I won't braid your hair next time." "Woo-woo. I want to see." Kiki grabbed her father's ear and acted coquettishly. In front of Beauty, Kiki only knew that there was wine in the morning and drink in the morning. She didn't care about tomorrow and the future. Poplar Fruit smiled and shrugged at Fong Beibei. Then, he carried his daughter and walked to the toilet. Fong Beibei followed and saw Poplar Fruit placing Kiki on the dressing table. Kiki twisted her waist and looked around. Poplar Fruit took out his phone to take photos of his daughter. Fong Beibei leaned on the doorframe and weakly shook Kiki's shoes in her hand. At this moment, Poplar Fruit finally looked like a young man. However, was it really fun to fool around with his daughter? Fong Beibei still had to go to class and help Poplar Fruit send Kiki to Grandma Chen. Poplar Fruit stopped before going too far. He carried Kiki and walked over. He intimately pinched Fong Beibei's nose and praised, "Baby is still the best. You're always treating me like a child." Fong Beibei protested Poplar Fruit's action that he often used on Kiki. However, the smile on her face betrayed her inner joy. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 684. After sending off Fong Beibei, Poplar Fruit led Lin Xingshan to the classroom downstairs. After waiting for a while, Wang Yubo also arrived, followed by Hu Junjie and Song Qing. That's right, Hu Junjie also followed. Looking at him carrying his girlfriend's bag with a smile on his face, who knows how cheap he is? Poplar Fruit automatically ignored the fact that he often carried things for Fong Bei. Are you worried about Song Qing? Poplar Fruit smiled and joked. Are you afraid that I will take your girlfriend away? No way. Can't I do a good deed? Hu Junjie straightened his chest and said righteously. Poplar Fruit didn't care whether Hu Junjie's words were sincere or not. He smiled and said, since you're here, don't just stand there and watch the fun. Stay and do something big with us, okay? Big brother, something big? Don't tell me you want to rob a bank? Hu Junjie said with a smile. After fooling around for a while, they returned to the topic. Poplar Fruit introduced everyone. They weren't very familiar with each other. Fortunately, Hu Junjie and Wang Yuba, these two lively guys, were there, so the atmosphere didn't become a bit dull. You may not know, or you may not fully understand what we are going to do. Poplar Fruit handed each of them a bottle of mineral water and said seriously, today, I plan to introduce you in detail. The four of them sat in a row facing the curtain that was originally used for class. Poplar Fruit turned on the projector and clicked on the PowerPoint that he spent some time to make yesterday. Although it was a PowerPoint, Poplar Fruit actually only put the pictures inside. There were very few words on it. Unlike others, what Poplar Fruit wanted to say was stored in his mind. You all know Guishan Province, the famous 8 mountains, 1 water, 1 land. The mountainous area occupies more than 90% of the area. Poplar Fruit pointed to the mountain where Xiong village was located in the picture and said, I happened to see this mountain area when I was driving to Shudu for a meeting. It is located in the northwest of Guishan Province. If you look at it on the map, it is more than 300 kilometers away from Shudu and 400 kilometers from the provincial capital. But, in fact, it is surrounded by mountains and forests. If you really want to pass through this mountain area, you need to pass through countless thrilling mountain roads. The actual road distance to Shudu is 600 kilometers, twice as long. Poplar Fruit said, I drove on this road for an hour and didn't see a second car. It's not even on the mountain. Poplar Fruit clicked on a few pictures of the mountain. He pointed to the slippery mountain road and the suspension bridge that was more than 70 meters long across the cliff. If you want to climb the mountain and reach the settlement of the Miao people, even if you are a strong mountain person, it will take more than an hour. Then, Poplar Fruit played a lot of pictures of the difficult life in the mountain on the curtain and said softly, in fact, you may have seen it in other public service videos. The difficult living conditions in the mountain area are sometimes not only because of the economic situation, but also because of the remoteness of the area. The people in the mountain area can't go out, and the businessmen outside can't come in. It becomes an endless cycle. How to get them out of poverty is a very big problem. Although I want to help, I don't study economics, and I don't have the ability to reverse the situation. I can't do it. Poplar Fruit waved his hand. Pfft. Lin Xingshan, who was the youngest, laughed out loud. Then, she shook her hand with a red face. I'm just stating a fact. No matter what, we have to be honest, right? Poplar Fruit smiled. In another flash, a group of children from Xiong village appeared. Many of their clothes were patched. Their faces were dark, but their eyes were not dull. Instead, they showed a thirst for novelty from the outside world. The next picture was of Kiki playing with them. Kiki. Everyone recognized her. These are the children from the mountain. Aren't they cute? Poplar Fruit put his hand on the curtain and covered Kiki's little face. He then let go and said seriously, other than being a little poor and not being able to watch Ultraman and Pleasant Goat grow up, they are no different from us in the city. I especially like the intelligence of these children. Poplar Fruit smiled kindly. They learn things quickly and are very active. Because they are eager to learn about the outside world, and even more eager to go out and have a look. That's why I thought at that time, it's better to teach a man to fish than to give him a fish. Poplar Fruit smiled. I can't change their current situation, but I hope they have the ability to change their own fate and the fate of the entire Hmong village. Everyone present stopped laughing. Even Lin Xingshan sat solemnly. Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said, "Don't be so depressed. Relax. We're not going to blow up a fort." Well, Poplar Fruit's joke was not funny at all. Everyone just twitched the corner of their mouth. Poplar Fruit said, "Only education can change their future. Otherwise, they can only be like their parents. They can either stay in the mountains and farm, or work in the big cities. But, without education, what can they do? They can only be migrant workers. After a year of hard work, they can bring home some hard-earned money and continue to work, and so on. But, if they were educated, they wouldn't be in this situation now. At least, they can compete with the people in the city and engage in industries that can create and reap more value. Then, those who are capable can start their own businesses and help their families and villagers in the mountains to seek happiness." "Senior, I'm not talking too much." Wang Yubo raised his hand and asked doubtfully, "It's good that you want these children in the mountains to be educated, but is that something we can do? You know, we've been studying for more than 10 years, and the education we received is not bad in this society. But, we dare not say that we are very competitive. Can we replace these primary schools, middle schools, high schools, and universities?" The others nodded, their eyes full of doubts. "Well said." Poplar Fruit waved his hand and patted the screen, showing the next picture he made. "In fact, it's very easy to study now. From primary school to middle school, tuition and miscellaneous fees are free. High school parents may have to work a little harder. In university, children from poor families can apply for grants or student loans to maintain their studies. We don't need to worry about what they will do in middle school or high school." Poplar Fruit smiled gently and said, "Although the children in the mountains are poor, after their parents go out to work, they still have some savings to support them through high school. Even if they don't, I will find a way to support them. But, the current problem is that before middle school, even the children in the mountains don't have the ability to take care of themselves or self-control. They can't go out of the mountains to study in the city. In the mountains, there are no teachers to teach them. Even if they come out to study in middle school, they can't keep up with the progress of the children in the city." Poplar Fruit sighed softly and said, "For this situation, I want to tell you a story. Xiao Han will also give you a preview. Tomorrow, there will be a plot that everyone wants to see. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations. Greater than over equal to." Chapter 685. What Yang Guo was telling was naturally teacher Meng Dongliang's story. After listening to the story, although there was no sad and beautiful music, and Yang Guo's storytelling ability was somewhat inexperienced, it still made the four of them shed tears. However, Poplar Fruit was not only there to make them feel touched. Poplar Fruit solemnly pointed to the empty school that he had taken a picture of earlier and said, "This is not an alarmist talk. I just want to point out a fact that people like us who live happily in big cities do not pay attention to. Whether it was decades ago or now, the education situation of these people has never improved." There was only one Mr. Meng. Before him, no one was willing to go into the mountains to teach children. In the decades that he insisted on teaching, several teachers came and went, but they never stopped running away. And after Mr. Meng passed away, you saw that there was no second successor. At the beginning of this year, Mr. Meng passed away, but two of his students were admitted to the junior high school in the county, and one of them was admitted to the best junior high school. This can be said to be the best reward for Mr. Meng. However, we have to see that the two children who were admitted to the junior high school are already old enough to go to senior high school. Poplar Fruit said sadly, "We can't delay any longer. In another 2 years, another generation will lose hope." There was no magic like in YY plots, where once the protagonist's voice fell, everyone would be excited and want to devote themselves to the cause of revolution. Poplar Fruit's topic was too heavy, and everyone understood this sense of urgency, but they did not feel that they could bear such a heavy responsibility. Everyone was thinking, but the atmosphere was oppressive. Lin Xingshan's lively eyes were rolling around, but she did not want to say anything. At this time, only Wang Yubo thought more thoroughly. Poplar Fruit's logical thinking was not very good, and it led everyone into a thinking black hole. However, Poplar Fruit did not ask them to think of a solution. Wang Yuba asked softly, "Senior, what do you think we should do to help these children?" Poplar Fruit looked at Wang Yuba with some surprise. "This kid is not bad." Poplar Fruit was sure that he had not practiced with him before, but it was like a worm in his stomach. The questions that he asked just happened to lead to the next topic. Poplar Fruit nodded and pressed the next PowerPoint. It was a picture of the school that Fat Dragon had sent to Poplar Fruit yesterday. It was a newly decorated modern classroom, similar to the school's computer room, but there were a lot more cameras and other equipment. The initial construction of the school had been completed, and Fat Dragon and the others began to build one classroom by classroom. "These are the basic facilities we will use for our future distance education. It's just one classroom." After a few days, the 6 classrooms will be able to accommodate all the children, Yonghua said with a smile. "So many computers? 1 per person? 1. Who paid?" Lin Xingshan asked. "Yes, I donated. But these computers are custom-made, so it's not as expensive as you think. The configuration is not as good as the ones in our dorm, but it's enough for teaching." Poplar Fruit nodded. "That's not cheap either. There are more than 300 people. That's at least a few 100,000, right?" Lin Xingshan looked at Poplar Fruit with a complicated expression. She did not know what Fong Beibei was thinking. She was willing to let her man spend money on these things. More than 1 million, all kinds of equipment, plus the renovation of the school. Poplar Fruit said simply, "It's actually not a lot. Think about it, in our Yangcheng, if a child wants to finish primary school, his family would have to spend at least a few 100,000, right? I don't even include the price of the school. If we invest a few thousand to 10,000 yuan to raise a child, wouldn't that be worth it?" Although that was what he said, everyone also realized that Poplar Fruit really did not care about this little bit of money. Hu Junjie and Song Qing looked at Poplar Fruit with envy. Although Poplar Fruit was only 2 years older than them, he was miles ahead of them in terms of money. He could take out 1 million yuan for charity, but they were still thinking about a few thousand yuan scholarship. Although everyone had different thoughts, there was one thing in common. The 4 of them admired Poplar Fruit even more. There were many people who were willing to spend money for charity, but there were not many people who were willing to spend money and rack their brains to do a good job. Yang was seriously explained to them the process of the long-distance education that he talked about. To put it bluntly, it was still a volunteer education. However, Poplar Fruit made use of technology to reduce the distance. The volunteers did not need to travel thousands of miles to the remote mountains to attend classes. They only needed the help of cameras, computers, and other equipment to communicate with the children in the mountains smoothly. This was a very good idea. Wang Yuba's head kept popping with exclamation marks. Many people were actually very kind. They did not participate in the volunteer education not because they did not want to help the children, but because the price of volunteering was too high. Not only was it hard, but it was also far away from the city where they lived. Except for a very small number of people, who would be willing to give up their youth to volunteer. If it were not for the country's policy support, not many people would go to the border. If Senior's idea can be realized, there will be more people joining this team. Wang Yuba thought seriously. Because this volunteer education would not force them to leave their living environment. It would only take some time for them to do things that they did not dare to do before. "Brother-in-law, I did the math." Lin Xingshan raised her hand and said weakly, "It seems that we spent a lot more money than applying for volunteers to teach in the mountains." Lin Xingshan calculated for everyone. If a volunteer did not have to pay for his allowance, he could live in a fellow villager's home. Food, drinks, transportation, and other expenses would only cost 20 to 30,000 a year. If they were a little more frugal, they might not need that much. 300 students and 6 volunteers would cost more than 100,000 a year, and 300,000 in 5 years. Poplar Fruit's investment was more than 1 million. Why did it take 5 years? With the current speed of computer equipment replacement, in another 5 years, Poplar Fruit would have to replace the equipment again, right? During this time, Poplar Fruit could not guarantee that the projectors, cameras, and other equipment would be in good condition. They would need to be repaired eventually. Wang Yuba frowned and asked, "Shan Shan, did you forget the marginal benefits?" He did not quite understand how the marginal benefits were calculated, but he still knew that there was such a concept. It should be, the more the audience, the higher the benefits of the investment. Poplar Fruit shook his head and said, "No, Yuba, Shan Shan is right. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to." Chapter 686. You can say that. Shan Shan is right, and Yuba, what you said makes sense too. Poplar Fruit said with a slight smile. Lin Xingshan and Wang Yuba were a little confused. They looked at each other and didn't understand. The marginal benefits that Yuba said do exist, but Shan Shan is also right. The investment in distance education does cost more than traditional volunteers. Poplar Fruit said generously, but there isn't such a big difference. As far as I know, there are volunteers recruited by the country in the border areas, and they get a subsidy of 12,000 yuan a year. If we include the donated books, they will have to spend at least 600,000 yuan if we spend more than 1 million yuan. Poplar Fruit said, of course, their conditions are even more difficult. Then why? Lin Xingshan frowned and asked. Then why would I rather spend more money than take the route of distance education? Poplar Fruit continued her words and answered his own question. That's because distance education can play a greater role on the basis of schoolwork. We, who live in the information age, may not be able to imagine the extent to which the children in the mountains have closed off their information. Poplar Fruit said, they don't know what the big cities are like outside, and they don't know about the popular movies and music. They are lucky because they have a TV in the village committee to watch, but they don't understand what computers and the internet are. The equipment invested in distance education is to allow them to discover and understand things on their own. Poplar Fruit said, as long as they understand the wonders of the outside world, they will work harder and harder to learn and seek change. Our education can also be extended in the classroom, and we can develop more extensive interest classes for children who are interested and have spare time to learn. Poplar Fruit pointed at Wang Yuba and laughed. Yuba, you can also open a French class. Of course, the premise is that you have to learn French well first. Wang Yuba was still holding his head high at first, but then he shrank his head and looked guilty, which made everyone burst into laughter. And Song Qing, you can lead them to read some literary works. Who knows, there might even be a few great writers among them. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, don't think that reading famous books is a difficult thing for primary school children. As long as they are interested, they will definitely do well. You must know that in Yangcheng, the children who haven't started primary school are already participating in all kinds of musical instruments, English tuition classes, or interest classes. Don't underestimate the potential of these children. I can teach them to play the piano, Lin Xingshan said excitedly, but she immediately withered. They don't have a piano. Poplar Fruit comforted him. You don't have to teach them piano. You can teach them how to appreciate music or learn music theory. Moreover, wasn't it possible to play musical instruments on mobile phones now? They can also use computers to learn how to arrange music. I don't know how to arrange music, and I don't know much about music theory either, Lin Xingshan said without confidence. Haha, I'm just giving an example. Yanghua smiled and said, in short, I want to create an environment similar to foreign children's learning environment so that they can learn more useful knowledge in addition to their schoolwork. It's not a simple exam-oriented education. It was Wang Yuba who saw a clue. He asked doubtfully, Senior, it's only 300 children, so... He didn't finish his sentence. Instead, he widened his eyes and asked in surprise, No, Senior, your distance education isn't just for these 300 children, right? Only then did Wang Yubo realize that Yang's huge plan wasn't simple at all. Once it was spread out, it would be a huge network that seemed to point towards China's basic education system. Actually, Wang Yubo was overthinking. Poplar Fruit didn't want to overthrow any system at all. He laughed and said, You saw through me? That's right, of course I don't just want to help these 300 children. In our country, there are many children in remote and poor areas who need help. You should have seen a lot of reports. What our society is facing now is not only the uneven distribution of teachers, funds, and other education resources, but also the uneven quality of education. Poplar Fruit continued, the children in the city start all kinds of training classes from a young age, such as piano, ballet, painting, English, and so on. They receive an elite education. What about the children in the mountainous areas? Poplar Fruit pointed to the new classroom on the screen and said, they can only learn the content in the textbooks. Maybe there are kind volunteers who can touch the computer with them and feel the elements of technology. Other than that, there's nothing else. Poplar Fruit pointed to himself and said, I'm a very obvious example. Shanshan can play the piano, but when I was in the countryside, I didn't even see a piano. Now I'm tone deaf, let alone use a musical instrument. Lin Xingshan blushed and shook her head, saying, No, brother-in-law, you're much better than me. Then I'm just a special case. Poplar Fruit laughed and said, But you should understand what I mean. The children in the mountainous areas are more pitiful than me. That's how the gap widens. When they study hard and enter middle school and high school, they will find that they can't compete with the children in the city. There is a gap in grades, and there is a gap in overall quality. They have already developed their abilities in many ways, but they only know how to study to death. Poplar Fruit sighed and said, Didn't the newspaper say that poor children can't be poor? It's hard for a poor family to produce a noble son. If the children of the poor want to stand out, it's not enough to just endure hardship. They've already lost at the starting line. What we are doing now is just the beginning. Poplar Fruit said sincerely, if these 300 children can have good results through distance education, we will promote it. My final idea is to let all the poor children in the world have books to read, and to be able to read good books. This was a rare feat for the usually modest and low-key Yang Guo to make such a bold statement. However, among the 4 people who were listening, except for Wang Yubo, who was still thinking, the other 3 looked at each other and thought that Poplar Fruit was too whimsical. Do you think I'm a little bit like a sex worker? Poplar Fruit smiled and said, I'm just talking about my personal dream, a dream that is almost impossible to realize. Such a big change, how can I do it just because I want to? You don't need to bear too much pressure because of what I said. Phew. Hu Junjie laughed and said, Big brother, you really scared us. Of course, if one day I can wear my underwear inside out, I will go with you to save the world. I don't object to you wearing your underwear inside out now. Song Qing laughed with everyone. Good, good. Lin Xingshan, who was watching the fun, shouted. As they joked around, the atmosphere in the room changed from depressing to joyful. In fact, everyone knew what Poplar Fruit meant. It was just that the amount of information was too much, and it was difficult for them to accept it all at once. So, let's focus on the present and think of it as forming a very ordinary teaching team to bring happiness and knowledge to the 300 children. Poplar Fruit shrugged and laughed. I have made an appointment with the Hmong village to hold the first lesson after the classroom is built. Do you want to come and listen? Sure. I want to listen. Lin Xingshan laughed and said, I also want to see these cute children. Xiao Han spent a lot of effort to write these chapters, but he felt that it was a little depressing. This topic is indeed a little heavy, but in order to explain the development of the plot, he had to mention it. Don't worry, everyone, the next chapter will resume its cheerful pace. Looking for monthly votes. Looking for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 687. The exchange with the children lasted for 2 hours, and it didn't end until 12 o'clock. The atmosphere was great. Although Lin Xingshan, Song Qing, and the others were a little shy and nervous, they were very touched by the enthusiasm and thirst for knowledge of the children who crowded the classroom. This was only the initial contact because Fat Dragon and the others still had to continue to further adjust the equipment and decorate the other 5 dormitories. Although the children were reluctant to leave, today's exchange had to come to an end. Lin Xingshan and the others were also a little unsatisfied. After turning off the equipment, they were still chattering about their experience. Everyone. Poplar Fruit clapped his hands and smiled. Everyone has worked hard today. You spent so much time listening to my chatter. How about I treat everyone to a meal at noon? I don't think so, Song Qing said apologetically. Big brother, my school has already organized everything. I'll be going to pick up the teaching materials this afternoon. You don't have to spend money. I'll accompany my wife, Hu Junjie said with a smile. As soon as he said that, Song Qing elbowed him in the chest. Senior brother, don't think about treating us to meals all day. Wang Yubo smiled. We didn't come here to freeload. It's a joy to be able to communicate with these children. I'm not eating either. Save money and do good deeds. Lin Xingshan said with a smile. Hu Junjie and Song Qing were about to leave first. Poplar Fruit sent Wang Yubo down with them. Then, he pulled Wang Yubo downstairs and talked to him. Poplar Fruit put his hand on Wang Yubo's shoulder. Wang Yubo, who was 1.7 meters tall, was much shorter in front of Poplar Fruit, who was 1.8 meters tall. Poplar Fruit said with a smile, Yubo, after listening to me this morning, do you have any thoughts of your own? Wang Yubo smiled and said, Yes, I do. I feel that senior brother's idea is too great. I'm not great. I'm just trying my best to do something small for the children. Poplar Fruit shook his head and said, But my ability is limited. I need your help. What do you need from me, senior brother? Just tell me. Wang Yubo patted his chest and said heroically. Poplar Fruit looked at him and said seriously, I originally wanted you to teach English to the children. Although you majored in French, now that you have Hu Junjie, you can be liberated. I need you to set up this charity club. Among the four of them, Poplar Fruit valued Wang Yubo the most. Being able to become the vice president of the student union had already proved his ability in this area. He also understood Poplar Fruit's thoughts the most. September and October were the golden period for the various clubs in the school to recruit new members. If Wang Yubo could take the lead and command, Poplar Fruit believed that Wang Yubo could arrange everything even if he was not in the country. Senior brother, you've hit the nail on the head. Wang Yubo smiled and said, Just now, when you asked me to teach the children for 10 minutes, I felt that I was a little weak. Compared to teaching, I'm more willing to do some organizational work. That's why it's said that there are specializations in the field. Professional things have to be done by a professional like you. Poplar Fruit said sincerely, It's just that, organizing, I'm worried that it may consume a lot of your energy. Senior brother, if you say please, then you're treating me like an outsider. Wang Yubo said straightforwardly, You can donate so much money to do such a great public welfare project, so what if I just invest some time and energy? Okay. Poplar Fruit was touched and patted Wang Yubo. At this time, he realized that this guy who was laughing and joking in class 3 months ago was actually such a responsible person in real life. After making an appointment with Wang Yubo to continue to study the details of their public welfare club, Poplar Fruit said goodbye to Wang Yubo and turned to go back. Poplar Fruit had a hunch that Wang Yubo would be a member of his project. With him, at least he could go to Bali in a week without worry. In a good mood, Poplar Fruit whistled upstairs. When he opened the door, he saw that Lin Xingshan was still helping him clean the house. Brother-in-law, why are you so happy? Did you see a beauty downstairs? Lin Xingshan looked up and saw that Poplar Fruit's face was flushed. She giggled and asked, What beauty? You're just a child who doesn't know, so don't guess. Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Lin Xingshan started school a year earlier, so she was 1 year younger than Fong Beibei. Compared to Poplar Fruit, she was almost 5 years younger. Poplar Fruit looked at her and felt that she was a child who hadn't grown up. You're the child. Lin Xingshan waved the broom and wanted to fight with Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit laughed and dodged. At this time, the door that Poplar Fruit didn't close was pushed open. Fong Beibei stood at the door, holding Kiki's hand. She looked at Poplar Fruit and Lin Xingshan in confusion. Lin Xingshan's face suddenly turned red, as if she had done something bad. She lowered her head and ran to Fong Bei with the broom. She called softly, Bei. Poplar Fruit scratched his head. He didn't know that Fong Bei would come back so early. In fact, it was not early. He just forgot the time. Poplar Fruit was not afraid of the shadow. He smiled naturally and said, Baby, Kiki, why are you back so early? Papa, I'm sleepy. Kiki rubbed her eyes and murmured. Fong Bei didn't have time to be jealous. She picked up Kiki and said to Poplar Fruit, It's not early. You've already had lunch at Grandma Chen's. I also brought you food. Fong Bei pointed to the bag in her hand. Shanshan hasn't eaten either. Do you want to stay and eat? Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. No, I'm going back. Lin Xingshan felt uncomfortable because of Fong Bei's gaze. She didn't dare to stay any longer. She picked up her bag on the chair and ran away. What's wrong with her? Poplar Fruit asked with a puzzled face. She was just helping to clean. Why is she in such a hurry now? Fong Bei said angrily, You're asking me? Well, I don't care. Poplar Fruit turned off the power in the room with a smile. He picked up the key and pulled Fong Bei out of the door. Let's go back upstairs. Fong Bei pouted and reluctantly let Poplar Fruit hold her hand. She was still a little unhappy. She followed behind and gently kicked Poplar Fruit's calf. Poplar Fruit looked back in confusion. He thought Fong Bei was tired. He smiled and said, Kiki, let me do it. After that, he took Kiki from Fong Bei's arms. This made Fong Bei even more unhappy. She pulled Poplar Fruit's right arm and stepped on Poplar Fruit's shoe. At this time, Poplar Fruit realized that Fong Bei didn't do it unintentionally. This guy finally realized that his girlfriend was jealous. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to, asterisk. Chapter 688. Going outdoors in spring was called a spring excursion, or a spring outing. Going outdoors in summer wasn't called a summer excursion, but sunbathing. Generally, girls weren't willing to go outside in summer. The scorching ultraviolet rays in the summer sun would make their skin worse. Pai Din-wan suggested going outside for a walk at first, but Duan Xueqing refused. However, Pai Din-wan repeatedly promised her that he wouldn't go out under the sun, so Duan Xueqing hesitantly agreed. After getting along with Duan Xueqing for nearly a month, he and Duan Xueqing had changed from strangers to good friends who could talk well. It had to be said that Pai Din-wan had a good grasp of Duan Xueqing's pulse, and he knew when to advance and retreat. He slowly improved her impression of him within the range that Duan Xueqing could accept, and he didn't make her dislike him. Sometimes, Duan Xueqing would ask herself why she was giving this man special treatment. Although she was usually cold, she was actually a girl with a high EQ. It could be seen from her decisiveness when dealing with Poplar Fruit's ambiguous relationship. She found that Pai Din-wan actually had some of Poplar Fruit's characteristics. It wasn't that Pai Din-wan was very similar to Poplar Fruit, and the two of them were very different. It was just that part of Pai Din-wan's personality was similar to Poplar Fruit's, and they were both very tolerant and warm men. Poplar Fruit could endure Duan Xueqing's coldness, and so could Pai Din-wan. He could accompany Duan Xueqing to quietly drink tea in the morning without saying a word, unless Duan Xueqing was willing to say it. In addition to this, Poplar Fruit was a little different from Pai Din-wan in terms of warmth. Poplar Fruit's warmth was reflected in his thoughtfulness and care for the people around him, while Pai Din-wan used his sunny smile to illuminate Duan Xueqing's heart. These were the reasons why Duan Xueqing liked Poplar Fruit. Am I looking for a replacement for Poplar Fruit? Duan Xueqing once asked herself. It seemed to be the case, but even if she knew, she was unwilling to break away from it. Pai Din-wan was good at one thing, which was that he could live a carefree life, and when facing the rich, he also had a normal heart. Duan Xueching once gave him a test, which was to tell him her background. As a result, Pai Din-1 smiled brightly and said, "I knew it long ago. Your waiter whispers there every day. It's hard for me not to know. But so what? I can be good friends with Jeka Zhao. Why can't I be good friends with you?" Jeka Zhao was his good friend and partner, and his family background was slightly inferior to Zhang Yujie's, but he was the only son, and the heir in the future. Duan Xueching was only my daughter, and their status was far inferior. Pai Din-1 didn't chase after her like those gold diggers and rich men, which made Duan Xueching happy to spend more time with him. Therefore, Duan Xueching was invited to participate in today's summer tour. Pai Din-1 was very experienced in this aspect, and considering Duan Xueching, he chose a park in a small town that tourists rarely heard of. The park was designed to imitate the gardens in Suching, with deep courtyards, pavilions, green willows, red flowers, lakes, and mountains. Of course, the mountains here referred to artificial mountains. There weren't many people, so Pai Din-1 rented a small pavilion in the center of the lake from the park's management, and went on a boat. A small red clay stove slowly boiled water to make tea, and there were some delicious cold dishes in the insulated box that he brought over. Duan Xueching saw how busy Pai Din-1 was and felt a little touched. Pai Din-1 was quite thoughtful, and the cold dishes he brought for the picnic weren't greasy. For example, the famous Jiangnan dish, big boiled shredded tofu, was made with shrimp and chicken soup, and tender green bamboo shoots floated on top of the clear soup, which looked very suitable for Duan Xueching's taste. The two of them were still sitting quietly across from each other, drinking tea and enjoying the scenery, and enjoying the cool lake breeze in the pavilion in the middle of the lake. Duan Xueching didn't know that when she looked out of the pavilion, Pai Din-1's eyes flashed with a hint of struggle, as if he had something to say, but he kept it in his heart again and again. "In the end, I still have to say it." Pai Din-1 took out his phone, looked at the displayed content, and sighed quietly in his heart. He replied with 2 words, "Don't worry." Then he deleted the 2 messages and emptied the trash can. "What's the matter?" Duan Xueching looked at him and asked for the first time. "You can go back now." "Nothing, just a message from a client." "Don't worry, I told him to wait until I go back." Pai Din-1 smiled and said. He put a new cup of tea for Duan Xueching, then looked at her with a hesitant expression. Duan Xueching sensed it. She frowned, took a sip of tea, and didn't ask. She just sat there and waited for him to speak. "There's something I want to tell you." Pai Din-1 seemed to be struggling, and said softly, "Listen to me first, don't be angry." His expression made people feel as if he had done something wrong to Duan Xueching. Duan Xueching didn't answer. She just stared at him with her pure eyes, waiting for him to speak. "It's like this. The day before yesterday, your family's boutique suddenly asked Jack to give me an invitation to the Bali Fashion Week." Bai Tingyuan touched the tip of his nose, seemingly a little guilty. Duan Xueching's handsome eyebrows slightly raised, and her face immediately became cold. "Don't be angry." Pai Din-1 touched his nose and said, "I haven't agreed yet. I've been hesitating for the past 2 days. Pai Din-1 hesitated and said incoherently, "I don't know if I should agree or not." "I know you won't agree. It's just a month away." I'm still hesitating." Why was he hesitating? Duan Xueching knew the reason. Since Pai Din-1 met her, he had sighed in front of her more than once. "As a photographer, my biggest dream is to participate in the biggest fashion show in the world." Of course, Pai Din-1 thought that the biggest fashion show in the world was Milan Fashion Week, but Bali Fashion Week was not bad either. This invitation seemed to be the closest he had ever been to his dream. Duan Xueching sneered. She finally understood why she was so close to Pai Din-1, but her family didn't do anything. It turned out that they didn't leave him alone, but wanted to use Pai Din-1 to help Duan Xueching get out of the shadow of heartbreak, and then kick him far away to Bali Fashion Week. What a good plan. Duan Xueching sneered with a little sadness. She thought sadly, why? Why couldn't you do it more flawlessly? If they had sent the invitation through someone else's shop, maybe she wouldn't have found out. My first love was a failure without a trace of dignity. My second love, will you kill it before it even starts? Pai Din One touched his nose and stammered, how about I refuse? Jack won't give me any trouble. Pai Din One's words warmed Duan Xueqing's cold heart. Considering her feelings, she was even willing to give up her dream. No, you accept it. Duan Xueqing suddenly smiled, and her smile was as cold as the winter wind. I'll go to Bali with you. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 689. In Yongqing, Poplar Fruit and Fong Bei were both quite shy. After Kiki woke up from her afternoon nap, the two of them were too embarrassed to be together. In the afternoon, Poplar Fruit didn't really want to go out, so he took the information that Wang Di gave him and continued to prepare the secret manual for Fong Bei. Although there was still a long time before Fong Bei and the others left for the competition, Poplar Fruit didn't have much time left. After he finished summarizing the secret manual, he still had to teach Wang Di and Shen Hong how to write a thesis. Kiki kept saying that she wanted to go out to play, so Poplar Fruit found her 2 episodes of cartoons to appease her. Time flew by. If it wasn't for Song Jiwen's call, Poplar Fruit wouldn't have noticed that it was almost 5 o'clock. Old Gua, are you coming back to play basketball? Song Jiwen asked casually over the phone. Why don't you bring your girlfriend over to meet us? What basketball? Do you have a competition with Uncle Dao and Uncle Jean? Poplar Fruit asked excitedly. In the past few months, Poplar Fruit had been too busy. Other than going out to practice martial arts in the morning, he didn't participate in any other sports activities. Song Jiwen often complained that without Poplar Fruit's thigh, he was often abused when he played basketball. Let's not play basketball. Let's play badminton. Song Jiwen laughed. Coincidentally, I have little Chili on my side, and you have 2 people on your side. Let's play doubles. When they were in university, Song Jiwen and Poplar Fruit were not only good at basketball, but they were also good at badminton. It could be said that this sport became popular on Higashiyama University's campus. You still call her Little Chili? Poplar Fruit laughed. Aren't you afraid that she'll beat you up? What are you afraid of? Song Jiwen chuckled and said, I've also discovered that she's only fierce with her mouth, but she doesn't even have the strength to fight. Poplar Fruit's lips twitched as he muttered in disdain in his heart, that's because she's magnanimous. If she really made a move, you would have to stay in the hospital for half a month. However, he didn't say much. Anyway, it was fine as long as these 2 enemies found a way to peacefully coexist. Poplar Fruit didn't have the energy to run over every day to persuade them to fight. Back in the house, Poplar Fruit asked Fong Bei if she wanted to go. Her lips were no longer swollen, and the hickeys from the afternoon were almost gone. It was no big deal for her to go outside. Sure. Fong Bei said eagerly, I'm a badminton expert. Really? Poplar Fruit looked at her suspiciously. Fong Bei ran 800 meters and had to walk 100 meters with her hands on her waist. She didn't look like an expert at all. Of course. I'll show you later. Fong Bei waved her small fist as she threatened. She wasn't scary at all. Instead, she looked cute. Kiki also wanted to go out and play, so Poplar Fruit gave Song Jiwen an affirmative reply. After changing into light sportswear, even Kiki changed into small sneakers and a small towel to absorb sweat on the back of a small t-shirt. Jean Z was also brought along, and the whole family was mobilized. Poplar Fruit drove them to Jinli District. Isn't your sportswear a bit too short? Fong Bei asked as she sat in the back to take care of Kiki. It was indeed too short. It was originally a pair of pants, but the thighs were exposed. It was also a bit tight, just like a swimsuit shorts. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, I haven't played badminton for a long time. This pair of pants was worn before, so it's normal that it doesn't fit now. Fong Bei didn't dwell on the reason. She smiled and said, then when we go back, I'll help you pick a new pair online. Song Jiwen had seen Fong Bei at Poplar Fruit's house before, but they weren't familiar with each other. Poplar Fruit introduced Chan Anlin to them again. Sister-in-law is so beautiful. Song Jiwen and Chen Anlin laughed at the same time. In fact, they were both older than Fong Bei, so they were deliberately teasing Fong Bei. Fong Bei didn't show any weakness. She stood beside Poplar Fruit, who supported her, and said with a smile, "No, Brother Mosquito's girlfriend is the beautiful one." "Who's his girlfriend?" Chen Anlin glared at the innocent Song Jiwen, pulled Fong Bei and said, "Call me Sister Fong Bei. I have nothing to do with this guy." "Hey, what's with your attitude?" Song Jiwen shouted in dissatisfaction, "You're saying it as if I want to have something to do with you." Poplar Fruit chuckled at the side. He didn't mind watching the show. After the last time, Poplar Fruit thought that Song Jiwen and Chen Anlin had reconciled. Now it seemed that enemies were still enemies, and they started to quarrel again in less than 2 sentences. "How's the preparation for your martial arts school?" Poplar Fruit asked with a little concern. Chen Anlin could solve the problem of money by herself, and Poplar Fruit didn't know much about operations, so he asked Song Jiwen to help. He only asked occasionally. "I haven't found it yet, but there's no hurry." He said that choosing a good location is more important than thinking of 10 marketing ideas. Chen Anlin shook her head with a calm expression. It was a world of difference from the way she used to chase after Song Jiwen. After chatting for a while, they walked to the basketball court. Song Jiwen was still nagging along the way. "Old Gua, why do you want to live at the school? That teacher's apartment doesn't even have a basketball court or a parking lot. Why bother?" Poplar Fruit chuckled and didn't refute, nor did he tell him the real reason. Fong Bei's jealousy was a hobby between the two of them, so it wouldn't be nice to say it out loud. "Play well. Don't drag me down." Song Jiwen was ready to kick off, but he didn't serve. Instead, he glanced at Chen Anlin and said with a chuckle, "Go to hell." Chen Anlin gritted her teeth and said, "You're the one who's dragging me down." "I think Brother Mosquito and Sister-in-Law are quite compatible." Fong Bei snickered and said to Poplar Fruit, "Really?" Poplar Fruit turned to look at the pair of enemies, shook his head and said, "That's impossible, right? They can't wait to fight when they see each other. How can they be compatible?" "You don't understand. Beating is kissing and scolding is love. They haven't realized it yet." Fong Bei laughed. Fong Bei said, "I don't think Brother Mosquito is the kind of man who has a bad mouth, right? If he doesn't like it, why does he always make Sister-in-Law angry?" Poplar Fruit thought for a moment and felt that it made sense. Song Jiwen used to be a carefree and generous guy. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had so many girlfriends. But recently, his behavior was indeed a little abnormal. It seems that Anlan is the same. Poplar Fruit nodded and described to Fong Bei as he pondered. Anlan also told me that after she met Mosquito, her temper became worse. That's right. Fong Bei smiled confidently. They just haven't realized it yet. Then should I tell them? Poplar Fruit asked. If he could set them up, Poplar Fruit would be quite happy. Of course not. Fong Bei quickly waved her hand and said, "They can't be anxious. They're not ready to face their inner feelings yet. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.